Till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very good morning, 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Britain gets a double COVID boost as the self-isolation period is cut to 7 days and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson declares Christmas in England is on. But with a New Year lockdown potentially looming, how are you feeling? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Chancellor Rishi Sunak is being accused by some of not doing enough to help businesses hit by the rise in COVID cases after refusing to bring back furlough. Do you think Sunak has got it right?
In Wales, going to work is going to be made a crime with a £60 fine for anyone going into the office unnecessarily. But you can still go to the pub. Does it make sense to you? How's that going to be enforced?
And what's your idea of the perfect Christmas? We'll share the findings of a new poll on the perfect recipe for the perfect way to spend Christmas Day.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Great British Breakfast.
Very smiley this morning. How nice.
I am feeling smiley. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because it's nearly Christmas and Christmas in England looks like it's on. Let's give you an idea of what the front pages are saying. Quite a lot of celebration on them, I have to say. The Eye leads with the news that Christmas is happening, although new restrictions could be implemented after the weekend. But the paper reports there's pressure on Number 10 after Nicola Sturgeon announced stricter measures in Scotland.
The Independent leads with an exclusive report that Boris Johnson's Cabinet Secretary misled officials over the party's row as Simon Case stepped down as head of the investigation into the Downing Street party allegations, also reportedly assuring colleagues he had no knowledge of lockdown-breaking parties. Let's
look at The Guardian. They continue to lead that the Prime Minister has ruled out further curbs on Christmas socialising, but the paper reports this could then mean tougher measures may be announced after the Christmas weekend.
Glad tidings for Christmas, but perhaps not for New Year. That's in the Daily Telegraph. Also on the front page is the story that the Welsh may still visit the pub, but face £60 fines if they go to work.
The Prime Minister's urging people to take a COVID test before meeting relatives for Christmas. That's the front page of The Times.
Metro leads with the story of Britain's biggest divorce payout as Dubai's ruler, Sheikh Mohammed, is ordered to pay his wife £554 million after a UK court heard that he terrified her.
The Daily Express front page. Christmas can go ahead, but new lockdown curbs loom. The paper also leads with an exclusive of Sajid Javid's bid to boost the well-being of the nation.
Front page of the Financial Times is the story that Russia's President Vladimir Putin has warned of appropriate military technical measures in response to the threat of NATO's expansion towards Russia's borders.
And The Sun says Christmas can go ahead, but New Year's Eve looks doomed.
And it's the story that dominates the papers. It's our main story. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announcing that there will be no new COVID restrictions in England before Christmas this year, but did not rule out the possibility of introducing them later.
Naturally, we can't rule out any further measures after Christmas, and we're going to keep a constant eye on the data. But in view of the continuing uncertainty about several things, severity of Omicron, uncertainty about the hospitalisation rate or the impact of the vaccine rollout and the boosters, we don't think today that there is enough evidence to justify any tougher measures before Christmas.
OK, speaking exclusively about England there. Meanwhile, in Scotland, they're going to implement tough new measures for social events and sport matches from Boxing Day. So many Hogmanay celebrations for the new year have been cancelled. Today, the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, as well, is going to announce COVID rules for Christmas in Wales, while Stormont ministers will meet later to consider new restrictions in Northern Ireland.
Well, people infected with COVID-19 in England can now stop self-isolating at 7 days if they test negative twice. This is 3 days earlier than the previous 10-day mandate. Health Secretary Sajid Javid hopes this will minimise staffing disruption caused by the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. It is based on the latest guidance from health officials.
Well, let's look at all of these top stories. Joining us in the studio is Oscar Redrock, Public Affairs Consultant with Hawthorne Advisors. Oscar, thank you very much for joining us. So, Christmas, it seems, at least in England and in Scotland, but the rules change on Boxing Day, is still on.
That is undoubtedly a good thing. I think people have woken up, or last evening with the, Boris Johnson's announcement, will breathe a momentary sigh of relief. But I would say, I remember last time I came on the show with you, it was 2 weeks ago, and it feels like I spoke about, it felt like we were slammed into a waiting room of uncertainty. And, the last 2 weeks, that intensity, that uncertainty has built up and built up and built up. And actually, I don't think Boris particularly had a choice yesterday. And I think the choice is, of course, we are, thankfully, I think, seeing a decoupling between case rates and hospitalisations. That will inform that. But yesterday's announcement for Boris was, I think, also partly a political one.
Well, it was a human one as well, because people have plans for Saturday that up until yesterday were still up in the air.
Yeah, which is no way... I have to say, it's something that I think the viewers of, GBNews in particular, actually, something I've been quite heartened by, actually, and trying to take some positivity and light from this, is something they won't stand for, that level of uncertainty. And I do fear what's to come, though. After Christmas, I do.
The uncertainty's still there, though, isn't
exactly.
it? Because we don't know what happens as of Sunday.
Exactly why I said a momentary sense of relief. I don't think people quite realise, and I know we all want, our lovely plans that we have at Christmas is one thing, when we gather and we meet people we love, and I do not say that flippantly. That is hugely, hugely important. But I think of businesses, and I have done for the last 2 weeks, and not being able to plan. And I know we'll probably talk about the £1 billion business support package that comes out today. But I'm telling you now, and I know there'll be business owners watching this too, that will say, I would exchange that money for certainty so I can plan. And that still looms over us, that the lack of ability to do so.
Well, there's certainty and there's certainty. In Wales, the certainty is that if you go to the office and don't need to, you face a fine. You're being criminalised for it.
So every time I feel a sense of frustration about how things are are happening in England at the moment, I hear and see policy like that. And I genuinely do not understand how the people of Wales could accept that. It's complete insanity. How have we ended this dystopian kind of present where policy like that is shipped out and accepted? I will never, never understand.
It's going to be a sort of real painful few days. Lots of people have been talking about this sort of lockdown by stealth. Is that what you've been doing? Have you been limiting the kind of interactions you've been taking part in?
I have. But to go to almost answer that question, but also touch on the policy we're seeing in Wales in terms of, I think sometimes there is a slight middle-class comfort to these lockdown, or at least these restrictions, particularly in terms of working at home and limiting. It can be quite a lovely, cuddly experience for the middle class. They can sit in their lovely flat with their lovely laptop, doing their work, and the world kind of passes them by and they kind of think, oh, it's cold outside, this is cosy. But for the vast majority of people, being cooped up and actually being fined for going to work is... I think is genuinely kind of inhumane.
Let's just talk about Rishi Sunak's announcement yesterday, £1 billion, which works out, I think, about £6,000 per business. Too little, too late is the criticism. But, of course, there are other industries, airlines and others, who are still in a mess and getting nothing.
No, absolutely. And when I worked in Parliament, it was the economic support packages were always the pinch point in terms of the email inboxes for MPs completely flooding with different sectors and different businesses saying, where's my bit of the pie here? I think the difference now, and I think this is the key difference, is that this offer, at the busiest time of year, after the 20 months we've had, I've heard business owners, and seen on Twitter, a lot of them saying it's almost insulting. It's just £6,000 for a lot of them, just about breaks down as keeping the lights on kind of bills, but does nothing to plug the gap that they are now experiencing whatsoever.
We're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail later on the programme, but let's move on to these constant streams, these photographs that are being leaked, these allegations of parties that did or didn't happen at number 10 Downing Street. The man put in charge to look after and oversee the inquiry has to excuse himself. Yeah, it does become somewhat kind of beyond parody at this stage. I think he stepped aside, and he stepped aside very quickly. I think that is the only way that this could work. Speaking more generally about the current pictures and the leaks and the constant revelations we're seeing, I think it's confirmed what people perhaps knew was behind the curtain. And I think that the cut-through we're seeing on it and the distrust that we're seeing in political leaders, and of course that filters through to people at Simon Case, is the worst it's been for quite some time. I don't know if you saw the darts the other night. Did you? At Alexandra Palace, everyone's chanting.
Chanting.
There is. Keep talking. There's a great
stand up if you hate Boris Johnson, and I saw that, and I genuinely thought that there it is.
This is the Telegraph
live TV
in the Telegraph. This is the darts, and this thing here, all round to Boris's arse.
Yeah, and honestly, when I saw that, I thought that is cut through, and actually, that makes me think Boris's days are perhaps somewhat numbered.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I mean, this all started really with the Owen Paterson row. People have their views of the relationship between Boris Johnson and the truth. Quite a distance between the two at times. I'm just wondering, the constant surge of stories about parties, people on the whole were getting fed up with it. OK, clearly, either their defence is, well, we weren't sure of the rules ourselves, which I think would be a defence you could sort of go, well, it was very confusing. But we now know, clearly rules were broken. This constant leaking of photographs and stuff, I mean, there's some mischief going on, which isn't news in your world, in political circles, but whoever leaked that photograph, whoever took it, has an agenda. And we have a government, whatever we think about what's going on, are dealing with the biggest crisis any government's going to face in a generation. And OK, if they need to have a drink as they take us through it, my personal view is I'd rather they were relaxed and dealing with this in a sensible way. I mean, the Health Secretary, Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson, I'm not surprised they were talking at the time because they needed to. We'd have been upset if they weren't.
In many ways, I agree with you that. And I think that the mischief makers that are behind the scenes are in danger of actually overplaying their hand. And actually, a lot of common sense people, I think in the end, if we keep seeing these constant leaks again and again and again, I think a lot of common sense people will be like, you know what, sod it. I don't want to see it. I want to know that.
Or something like that, yeah. Yeah,
something along those terms, maybe a bit early for 6 a.m. But I actually want you to be, I want the news agenda to be prioritising actually dealing with this crisis, and, a couple of, glasses of wine outside 2 years ago now, you can keep it.
Right. A quick word about Liz Truss, who has inherited one hell of a job, the Northern Ireland Protocol, suggestions she's said to the EU, either you play ball or we rip the whole thing up.
So I feel for Liz on this one. I feel for Liz Truss. I think this is a real... We talk about the politicking and the manoeuvring. Liz Truss is the, as we speak now, most popular Secretary of State amongst the membership. She's absolutely been seen as a potential... That's what all the polling indicates. Potential, the dominant threat to Boris in terms of potentially replacing him before the next general election. This, to me, is a hospital pass. I think this is what... I think maybe it's double or quits if she can negotiate this successfully and achieve what no one has been able to in the last few years. Then she's well on her way to overtaking Boris Johnson, I believe, for the next election. But for me, this is a hospital pass. I've heard rumours that she's doing her posturing in terms of the Estonia tank picture. She's not quite on top of the detail. I personally don't see this working out well for Liz's career. I really don't.
Well, many have fallen on the battlefield of fighting the EU, haven't they?
Absolutely. So you could argue it'd be quite tactful for the PM to have given her this brief and set her up for a tricky few months ahead.
But a Machiavellian view there.
I am very cynical,
you
so
are.
I know that.
You are.
Now.
Well, it's always good to see you, Oscar.
Thank you so much.
And happy Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, it is. Right. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Right, it's 6:15. We mentioned Wales and that the First Minister, Mark Drakeford's going to outline his plans for COVID restrictions after Christmas later today. Omicron cases in Wales are predicted to reach several thousand by Boxing Day, with a number of different measures being considered to tackle the spread.
Our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson is across this story for us today. Lily, good morning to you. Do we have any idea what's going to be announced?
Yes, good morning, Simon. Usually I would have had an idea by about midnight last night about what was going to be announced today, but this morning we still really are none the wiser. We do know that the First Minister will address the nation just after midday today to kind of outline his plan as to what life in Wales could be like after Christmas, and we are expecting a few more restrictions to be announced, possibly for the hospitality sector in particular. Now, measures for after Christmas could include things like the return of the rule of 6 and table service at restaurants and pubs. His announcement may even include indoor mixing and the return of household bubbles, but it's currently unclear if people will be advised just to limit their social contact, or it will actually become law as to, how many people you can have in your house. Those details aren't known just of yet, but we do know that ministers aren't expected to announce any kind of lockdown over Christmas. Today's announcement is purely going to be for after Christmas and what we could see coming from Boxing Day onwards. Now, last week it was announced that from the 27th of December, workplaces and shops will have to implement that 2-metre social distancing rule again, and nightclubs will be closed too. So it kind of feels like COVID measures here in Wales are trickling down and coming back into our lives once again, without Wales actually going beyond alert level 0. So we'll have to wait for that announcement after midday from the First Minister to kind of see what life in Wales will be like after Christmas. But those in the hospitality industry are particularly concerned about what the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022 could look like for them and their businesses.
OK, Lillian, I know you're going to be across that for us this morning, but let's also mention this story. Tell us the details. Fines can now be handed out to people in Wales who aren't working from home without good reason. What are the details?
Yeah, that's right, Rosie. A really interesting one and quite a shocking story, obviously, for people working in Wales. So until now, people in Wales have been advised to work from home if they can. So this has been guidance from the Welsh Government, which has been unwavering throughout the pandemic. So if you can work from home, please take that option if you can. However, as of this week, workers will receive a £60 fixed penalty notice, and companies will be hit with a £1,000 fine if people are found to be working in the office or on location if they could well have been working from home instead. Now, unions are particularly shocked about this decision, saying it's not up to the employee always as to, where is best for them to work. So slapping a fine on them is counterproductive because it's not necessarily their responsibility to decide where they should be working. So unions are also saying that the fine actually could well affect the poorest and the most vulnerable workers in Wales. So this enforcement approach of this kind of includes the improvement or closure of premises, with business owners liable to be fined £1,000 for not complying, which could then rise to a maximum of £10,000. Now, the Welsh Conservatives and the Welsh Liberal Democrats have asked the Welsh Government to scrap the £60 fine, which can be implemented onto individual workers and employees. And this announcement kind of came out of nowhere. There was no formal announcement that this was going to happen. It just kind of happened this week and we all found out about it. But the Welsh Government say that these additional measures have been introduced to limit the spread of the virus and protect public health. But, as I said, unions are not happy about this decision at all.
Lily, we'll be talking to you again. I think one of the bulbs has just gone on your tree there. But,
Oh.
no, I'm joking. It looks lovely. All festive. Made you look. We'll see you later on. Lily, thank you very much.
Now, it's coming up to 6:20. Here on the programme, we're going to bring you the latest on the Chancellor's new business bailout. Is it enough? Who's it going to help? After the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather, at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine. Further west, always more cloud outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again. And that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west. Double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast, more rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
It's 25 minutes past 6. Now, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, pledged a £1 billion business bailout for those hit hardest by the government's stealth lockdown. Although the Prime Minister insisted there would be no new restrictions before Christmas, his previous urge for caution and reduced social mixing has cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade.
The Chancellor announced grants of up to £6,000 per premises for hospitality and tourist venues who've been left devastated after a wave of cancellations and no-shows due to COVID concerns.
Well, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline by some landlords experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas. We can find out more. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us live from Lambie in Nottinghamshire. A very good morning to you, Will. Just explain, what are the new grants?
Good morning. Yes, this has been the main story in the news since the Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced this £1 billion funding package from yesterday. It's been about 2 weeks, 3 weeks since we saw the start of these new restrictions. Started off with masks. We finished recently, in England at least, with COVID passes being introduced for nightclubs and larger theatres and larger events. And for the last 2-3 weeks, the industry has been crying out to see a return of the funding and the grants that we saw at the height of the pandemic. That came through yesterday. Of course, a billion in funding. Just to give you a bit of an idea of where that might stretch out to, in what sorts of areas. Hospitality, certainly the hardest hit industry during this period of new restrictions, as we've seen the massive wave of Omicron sweeping through the United Kingdom. The main one coming for that is for, of course, pubs, restaurants, theatres. That's £6,000, up to £6,000 for each eligible business. So that's the maximum that they can claim. There's a couple of other different amounts that they can claim based on the business rates of the building. Some in the industry have said that might favour the bigger businesses, the bigger chains, but it's in the most part £6,000 is the maximum that they're going to be able to claim. There's also £30 million for the Culture Recovery Fund. That's the thing that helped a lot of museums stay open during the height of the pandemic, a return to that. And the final one, the government is going to be paying for sick pay. So that's any small to medium business with fewer than 250 staff members. They'll pay 2 weeks worth of sick pay if they do get sick with COVID over the next few weeks. And they can also, from mid-January, back pay that for the period that we've just going through right now. I think that opens today.
Well, thank you very much. We're back to you later on. We're staying with this. Let's talk now to Michael Wilson, business and finance commentator. Also to Dave Manford, who's co-founder of Forum of Pubs and a pub landlord himself. Thank you both for joining us. Mike, let's start with you. There was a time where £1 billion sounded like a lot of money, but it's a mark of where we've come over the last couple of years, that the Chancellor can just dish it out, Rishi dishy, and there are those saying it's still not enough.
When you're waving your £10 note at the bar, trying to, on your case, £20 note at the bar, trying to get attention from somebody, a barkeep, to order some drinks, you would be surprised to know that actually hospitality is a massive part of the UK economy. 1 in 10 jobs is hospitality. The GDP contribution I'll give you these boring figures. I know it's early in the morning. £59 billion to the economy. That is a lot of money. So the 1 billion is never going to be enough. You have to ask the question, what is enough? He has quite rightly come under extreme pressure from people in the hospitality businesses, the hospitality sector, which was straight from pubs, restaurants, B&Bs, and even theme parks. This is a huge business for the UK. As I say, 1 in 10 people work for it. And also, none other than the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which tends to be quite tight with the purse strings, is saying that if he wanted to, he could actually borrow more because interest rates are quite low. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but this was never going to be enough. The trade bodies have said that this is a nice start, but actually those at the front line of hospitality are saying it's far too little and too late. Give you one example. There's a restaurant, you and I may have been to it, called Gaucho in London. Their loss has been 10,000, equivalent to 10,000 people not turning up. Now that's huge for a business, however big you are.
Well, let's find out how it's working in practice. Dave, just tell us what business has been like for pubs this week, and up to £6,000 per pub. What kind of dent does that actually make on your finances?
Okay, so I answer the first question. The impact has been horrendous on the pub industry, particularly. I run a pub myself. I'm luckier than most in the fact that my pub is privately owned and free of tie. Therefore, we are profitable and we've got an accurately assessed rent, which very few pubs in this country can say. And we last week, 2 years ago, would have expected to take around about £18,000. Last week we took 8. That is not untypical. That is exactly the sort of, that's very representative of what's happening to other pubs in the industry. And consequently, already we've got to remember we've come out of this lockdown, the original lockdown, then the second lockdown. We've come out of it with extra debt, an uncertain market. This was going to be the period of time in which we could have at least started to recover, not just survive like so many pubs have over the last 6 months, 8 months, but actually start to recover and start to put some grassroots down for next year. And that's all gone. It's just gone completely. We have no support on furlough, so we've got to keep our staff on board unless you're choosing to reduce your staff. There are many management things that you can do, sending people home early, etc., etc. But the bottom line is we have absolutely, in a space of 10 days, lost pretty much 50% of our trade. With regards to the support, the trade bodies might think it's decent, but then the trade bodies don't really represent tenants. They represent the large pub owning businesses and the large breweries who own the majority of pubs in this country, who are all owned by banks, by the way, or offshore hedge funds. Okay, so the trade bodies, they're quite happy because they've got a seat at the table, because they're really nothing more than lobbyists. But as for us, our voices aren't being heard, and we're not being listened to by government. We're not being represented correctly, and consequently, I've yet to meet or speak to anybody in the last sort of 12 hours who has welcomed this as being anything other than a real drop in the ocean. I mean, derisory, insulting. These are the sort of things that are being bandied around. The impact is and will remain nil, unfortunately.
OK, I just want to go back to Michael, because the dilemma that faces the Chancellor after the billions that have gone into furlough to keep businesses afloat, he now has to decide whether to pour billions more in to keep these businesses going, or all that money's been wasted because, as Dave says, businesses are now facing the point where they just can't go on.
They are, and it's good to have Dave on, isn't it, to talk about the sharp end of what's going on. I couldn't agree more with his point about the trade bodies. Absolutely right. The actual people are saying this offer is more or less insulting. It sounds a lot of money. However, Is there going to be more to come? Well, I think we'll probably know a little bit more about this after Christmas. He clearly rushed back from his California business jaunt or whatever it was, came back, this is Rishi Sunak, and listened to what hospitality had to say. But my point about the overall point about it is, what is enough? And if it's not the hospitality sector, then what other sectors are going to be asking for similar kinds of support? Your next story, trust me, next year, as soon as we get back from the Christmas holidays, will be this enormous rise, for example, in energy prices, because gas prices in Europe have rose 20% yesterday. They've risen 800% in a year. These are all pressures on the public purse, on personal purses, and also on what we're going to spend in pubs and restaurants. That's what's happening to this country right now. It's disgraceful, but it's happening, and it's happening to other developed economies around the world. This is something he's got to grapple with. So what we're seeing yesterday in the announcement, and today in this comment about it, £1 billion is a drop in the ocean. That's all it is.
Yeah, Dave, let's just go back to you. You know, Michael's just laid out the other pressures facing your industry with gas prices. Do you feel in January there may be a glimmer of optimism when the public feel, OK, I'm prepared to come back to pubs?
No, for many, it's too late. We've lost 10,000 pubs in the last 2 years. It is literally too late. People are... we represent a good 500 members, and we have access to over 2,000 on social media, and people are literally the announcement yesterday resulted in people saying, that's it, we are handing in our keys. That is happening everywhere. And the tragedy of this whole situation is, we told the government this 2 years ago. We gave them the answer to the problem. The answer to the problem was to go back to the owners of our pubs and to revisit the rents, which could have been done. Could have been done very easily. And as I say, I stress this, I cannot make this point enough. Pubs in this country are owned by property companies. They are all extremely wealthy. They have a lot of backing. They do not, and for the last 20 years, have been squeezing tenants to the point where they were regulated by this government because of their appalling business behaviours. This is not new. Our industry was exposed to this, and the government knew it, and yet still we have a chancellor who doesn't know what the average rent is for a pub in this country. He was quoted in March of last year of saying that pub rents were between 14 and 20 grand a year. The average pub rent in London is 105,000 a year. It's just, you know, and I find it breathtaking that we have somebody who is sitting talking to the representative bodies of the owners of our pubs, whilst the limited companies and the sole traders, the people like myself and my colleagues who are just running a business, are just completely unrepresented and not having a voice.
Very quickly, Dave, if not 6,000, what is a figure where you would go, he gets it?
Oh, I mean, for some pubs, so 6 grand is the equivalent of, for some pubs, a Saturday's taking. You know, so we're talking about the grants, the 25 grand grants that we got back in 2 years ago, kept people afloat. Okay, they kept them afloat. But you cannot put a figure on this because there are so many different varieties of pubs operating in so many different ways. It is very difficult to be able to put a figure on it. And each pub has come out of this pandemic at various degrees of debt, various degrees of pressure. But, you know, I mean, we're going to get four grand. You know, that's a quarter of what we lost last week. I mean, I can't put a figure on it. I can only put it into perspective of the amount of money that has been lost by the actions of the government and their announcements. It's very difficult to put into words. I have never felt so despondent as I do right now. And I've been involved in this campaign for many, many years, and obviously have spent the last 2 years dealing with very difficult situations and representing people in very difficult situations. And I have never felt quite as down and bleak as I do at this moment in time.
Well, Dave Mountford, co-founder and Forum of Pubs, thank you so much for your time this morning. And Michael Wilson, also, thank you.
Coming up here on the programme, a new report says the NHS England has failed to honour a promise made to those who suffer from asthma. We're looking at more after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. 20 minutes to 7. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon.
Now, a health service report has slammed the NHS and ministers for breaking what it calls a promise to asthma sufferers and those looking to quit smoking. In 2019, the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England agreed to increase the access of cost-effective medicines on the NHS, with asthma sufferers and those who were looking to stop smoking among those prioritised for drug access.
However, a report commissioned by NHS England shows that these two groups have not been served as promised. Well, Fan Chung is a professor of respiratory medicine at Imperial College London and consultant physician at the Royal Brompton Hospital. Good morning to you. How are they being let down here?
Oh, good morning. I'm not. Well, I think the report that you referred to was a report that was commissioned a few years ago, just to look at the, in terms of asthma, in terms of the access of those new treatments, those very new effective treatments that have come into the treatment of people who have bad asthma, or we call them severe asthma. And this treatment has been introduced in Europe and in North America and gradually around the rest of the world. These are treatments that are quite expensive, but they've become available here in the UK approximately 4 or 5 years ago. And this report looked at, in relation to our European neighbours, as to how much of those new medications, and we call them biologic therapies, that have been introduced for treatment of severe asthma. And unfortunately, UK was towards the bottom of the list of a list of about 6 or 7 European countries. And I think there's a good, there are a couple of reasons to me why this has happened. And I think one of the first reasons is that NICE, which is the arm of the NHS that decides how we're going to use new medications, has used a very high level of entry for patients with severe asthma to get this medication. And for example, one of the things that they stipulated was that people with severe asthma needed to have at least 4 asthma attacks in the previous year, when the studies that have been done to show that these biologic therapies are effective, they've used a cutoff point of at least 2 or more exacerbations in the previous year. So we are having a very higher bar of entry for those patients to get this treatment. And secondly, I think there is the latest biologic therapy that has come into use into the NHS only now has been introduced, and this biologic therapy has been available and been approved by the European agency. In fact, a couple of years ago now. So we are a bit late in introducing that newer biologic therapy. Now, I think these are probably the 2 main reasons why we are at the bottom in the list as far as the asthma new therapy is concerned. So I think the NHS is providing this treatment, but I think they are using a much more different level of entry for those patients to be able to get this drug.
Yeah, and Professor, you know, it's estimated about 200,000 people in Britain suffer from asthma. What difference would it make to them if the bar was lowered and all of them could access that type of medication?
Well, I think, you know, this medication, you need to have a certain number of conditions to be able to receive it. And one of them, as I mentioned, is the number of asthma attacks or exacerbations, as we call them. This is at a higher bar, as I said, for the UK. But also they needed to have certain level of what we call biomarkers, which is a level of a blood cell in eosinophils, as we call them in the serum, so in the blood. And the report states that there are 200,000 people with severe asthma. I mean, this is a proportion of people with asthma. So it's not the whole asthma population. So this is targeting towards a specific group, and that's this group of severe asthma. And amongst those patients with severe asthma, only a certain proportion will be able to access this drug. And I think what we're saying is that, you know, in the UK, compared to the European countries, I think less patients are accessible to it. I think one of the main reasons is because the bar is quite high, the way we put it up.
Let's just end on a positive note, because the treatment of cystic fibrosis is a success story, though, isn't it?
That's right. And I think that this is a great success story, and I think it's even a greater success because the drug we're talking about here is about 5 or 6 times, or probably even 10 times more expensive than the drugs we're talking about in terms of biologic. And this really has been a success through the activity of the cystic fibrosis patient groups, who have really done a very good job to convince the NHS that this is a good treatment for their patients, for the patients with cystic fibrosis, and that's very encouraging.
Professor Van Chung, thank you so much for your time this morning. Fascinating. Thank you.
Now, it's 6:45. Coming up here on the programme, you could face a fine in Wales for making unreasonable journeys into the office. Yes, that is right. We'll look at more after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine. Further west, always more cloud outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning, pushing up towards western Scotland. We could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again, and that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into a Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west, double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day, things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast, more rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes to 7. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Now, from Monday, you could receive a £60 fine in Wales if you're found to be in the office without good reason to be there. Wales' working from home guidance is now law, with employers facing fines of up to £10,000 for not complying with the regulations. But the workers' union TUC insists that the fines targeting employees set a really worrying precedent, that employees are just as responsible for facilitating home working as their bosses, which they argue is not the case.
Well, as we move towards working from home, or perhaps adapting to a radically different office landscape for those of us who are key workers, how can we best keep well under these new conditions? Well, Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez-Fernandez is Medical Director for Health Consulting at International SOS and joins us now. OK, for many of us, working from home can be a bit of a nightmare, depending on what stage of life you're in. You might have lots of young children, or if you're sort of in your 20s to 30s, you might be in a house share working in your bedroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And the science, actually backs that up. There's a recent study that came out in the Lancet, one of the most important journals, showing that anxiety, depression, really escalated to numbers we hadn't seen before throughout the pandemic. And of course, as you mentioned, some populations being hit harder, especially younger folks, those not being able to socialize, removed from their sort of peer network. So it has definitely affected the mental health of certain subgroups.
I guess one thing that would make you miss working with colleagues is being told that you can't. I mean, how damaging can that be?
Well, of course, with different people, you have different personalities, and we have to remember that some of those really thrive working in collaboration, especially those jobs that are of creative nature. So not being able to interact with each other might be extremely difficult. So it's important that organizations take these measures into consideration. And at International SOS, we advise companies to start to think about that. This is the new future, and we have to rethink how we work collaboratively, either whether it's virtually or whatever the means, for the next future.
Reckon of what's happening in Wales. It means the sort of choice you might have to say, do you know what, I'm actually going to work better in the office, I want to escape what's happening at home, has been removed from those people, or they face a £60 fine. Why do you think they've instilled that policy, and is it wise?
Well, I think the government is trying to put measures in place to safeguard, infection rates. We know that with Omicron, this new variant is extremely contagious, extremely infectious. And while the severe hospital cases and deaths seem to be lower than expected, which is obviously a great thing, if you're sick, you still will have to miss work. And so that means disruption of business continuity. It means a lot of people that have jobs, where they can't work from home will have to call in sick. And so this will disrupt the economy at a great scale. So I think some of these measures are being put in place to sort of safeguard the long-term thinking around, especially the holiday season, in regards to supply chain and rising case numbers.
I mean, a number of us have got used over the years to that work-life balance, and for many people that's now changed forever. What advice would you give to people who are trying to make that adjustment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always tell my patients and folks that the important thing is to maintain a structure. So having things that we call non-negotiables, both from a personal perspective as well as a work perspective. So this means, blocking out time for kids, for lunch, having those as non-negotiables, meaning that, nothing will over-trump those. And also establishing a good routine is important. We have to remember that our entire dynamic working from home has changed. Even the way we eat has changed. We now work next to a 24-hour buffet, i.e. the kitchen. So if we have a stressful day, stressful meeting, we might pop in for a unhealthy snack where we wouldn't have done so if we were in the office. So we need to, create new sort of ways to adapt to that. And one of the things we recommend is sort of hacking into your brain and letting yourself know when it's time to eat. So we advise, folks to sort of, for instance, put a placemat at the table every time you have a meal. So that way, neurologically, it rewires your brain.
Hacking into your brain? What did you say?
Hacking into your brain.
Yeah. It's a type of hacking into your brain where essentially you rewire the neural patterns to create behavior change. If you were to put a placemat sort of every time you eat, then it avoids you sort of snacking between meals and letting your brain know that that's when it's supposed to be hungry, instead of when you're stressful eating.
Well, I don't think that would work very well on me. I don't think so. Lots of people, you know, their kind of Christmas indulgence has already started and creeping into now your home office as well. Just finally, for anyone watching from home this morning who's feeling just firing up their laptop, working from home, who's feeling pretty despondent, do you just have one piece of advice to get them through maybe the last few working days before the Christmas holidays?
Yes, absolutely. Now, before we go on holiday, it's important more than ever to really, turn off and shut down while we go on break for those of us that can. And so, whether that means putting our phone on airplane mode when we're with family, not checking into emails. That's probably a great way to refresh ourselves. So I would advise that, as we go into this holiday period, try to use this as an opportunity to sort of, recharge ourselves for the coming year.
Get ready for the next year. Rodrigo, thank you so much for talking to us. Really appreciate it. And working from home, which is apt for this.
Yeah, hacking into your brain.
I know, I really thought I misheard.
No.
Hacking into your brain.
Yes, that could take a while in my case.
Yes, to try and not eat so much from home at Christmas time, I think it's very, very challenging. Let's move on.
Now, a new poll asked 2,000 Britons to describe what the perfect Christmas day would look like for the typical household. It found that the best Christmas day would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, be blessed by 4 inches of snow, a glass of bubbles before 10:30 in the morning, and ideally the opening of 13 presents. The One Poll survey also found that Christmas would not be complete without at least 2 mince pies being eaten while enjoying 2 festive films, following, of course, the perfect 2:30 p.m. timing for Christmas lunch.
2 films on Christmas Day. That's a lot of Christmas Day taken up sitting on the sofa watching films. Do you?
And count 30 for the first glass of fizz.
When do you have your first glass?
Well, as soon as the alarm goes off.
When's that?
8 o'clock, we're off.
Well, 8 o'clock, perfect time. When do you open presents in the day?
Afternoon.
Yeah, after lunch. I think if you do it first thing in the morning, sort of the excitement of the day is somewhat deflated.
Oh no, it's a total Christmas fest.
Do you do stocking still, Simon?
Right, we'll now move on. We'll be back with all the headlines while I have a little chat with my co-presenter.
A very good morning. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast this morning with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Britain gets a double COVID boost as the self-isolation period is cut to 7 days and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson declares Christmas is on. But with a New Year lockdown looming, how are you feeling? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
The Chancellor Rishi Sunak is being accused by some of not doing enough to help businesses hit by the rise in COVID cases after refusing to bring back furlough. Do you think Sunak got it right?
In Wales, going to work is being made a crime with a £60 fine for anyone going to the office unnecessarily. But you can still go to a pub. Does that make sense to you? And how would it be enforced?
What's your idea of a perfect Christmas? Well, we'll share the findings of a new poll on the perfect recipe for the perfect way to spend Christmas Day.
So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that there will be no new COVID restrictions in England before Christmas this year. But he did not rule out the possibility of introducing them later.
Naturally, we can't rule out any further measures after Christmas, and we're going to keep a constant eye on the data. But in view of the continuing uncertainty about several things, severity of Omicron, uncertainty about the hospitalisation rate or the impact of the vaccine rollout and the boosters, we don't think today that there is enough evidence to justify any tougher measures before Christmas.
And that is the advice for England. Meanwhile, in Scotland, it's going to implement tough new measures for social events and sport matches from Boxing Day, cancelling Hogmanay celebrations for the new year. In Wales, the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, is going to announce plans for COVID rules after Christmas, while Stormont ministers will meet later to consider new COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland.
People infected with COVID-19 in England can now stop self-isolating at 7 days if they test negative twice. This is 3 days earlier than the previous 10-day mandate. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, hopes this will minimise staffing disruption caused by the rapid spread of the Omicron variant and is based on the latest guidance from health officials.
So Kerry Cooper is Professor of Organisational Psychology and Health at Manchester Business School and joins us now. Thank you very much. Let's just start by that reduction in the isolation period from 10 days to 7 if you take 2 lateral flow tests. Many might ask, if it's safe to let people out, why didn't we do this before?
I agree with you. Why didn't we do it before? I don't know. I mean, listen, this should be about the science, shouldn't it? I mean, we have a lot of, I think, conflict between political leaders and the scientists on what is an appropriate behavior. But presumably, the scientists have said this is fine as long as you test yourself. And I think that's important. For me, this is our kind of Dunkirk spirit moment. This is where the community should all come together. We should get the political leadership we need, where politicians walk the talk. We should all be coming together now, because this virus doesn't discriminate freedom-loving people from the rest of us. I mean, we are all together in this. And I think we have to just use good common sense. Employers have to think through, and do they really need people in just at the moment? And let's just kind of work together on this. I think we'll be able to find a solution to this. But I think it requires real leadership, which I think we haven't had. And particularly leadership that actually behaves, that they actually do what they say they want the rest of us to do. And I think we'll get through this. Remember, we have great scientists developing a multivariant vaccine now. We're going to get that soon. We're going to have to live with it like we do with the flu vaccine, from now on, probably. Getting vaccines that will protect us. And I think we ought to follow the science, really listen to the scientists and what they say and what is useful at this point in time, given the variant that we're in the middle of.
Yeah, the trouble is I've got a feeling of déjà vu about all this, because this was said exactly this time last year, and the idea that we would have a second Christmas like this would have been abhorrent. We listened to the science then. We've had a year where vaccines came, and yet here we are. Nothing seems to be improving.
Yeah, but I think, Simon, the problem for me was I don't think that actually the political decisions that were reached did follow the science. And I think that's been the problem. We should have probably had more restrictions. I'm not saying a lockdown, by the way. I'm just saying more restrictions. Listen, my daughter just came in from LA with her partner. And he's a doctor, by the way, in LA. And they were appalled to see how few people were wearing masks. Because in LA, almost everybody wears masks everywhere in public spaces. We should have been doing that in September, October, November. We should just taking basic, the rest, all of us should have been doing that. And we should have had leadership that said that. And we should have been a bit cautious in public spaces, much more. I'm a football fan. I hope to be going on the 26th to see Manchester City play Leicester. Okay? I plan on doing that. But, again, the stadium should be COVID safe. They should have been like that for a long time, by the way. And that way we could have slowed down. This virus is going to be here with us. But it would have slowed it down a bit. And that would have been important. Really, it's not just saving the NHS, saving us. So, and therefore, let's slow it down a bit. But we should have been doing this ages ago, Simon. And the science, I think, if Sage and the other scientists would have been free to say what they really felt, I think we would have had a different scenario leading up to Christmas. But I agree with you. I mean, I don't want to stop Christmas for the mental health of people, by the way. I think it's really important that we link in with our families, that we have this. But, we're now where we are. We can't go back to September, where we should have probably started being a bit more cautious than we have been.
Are you suggesting that for the foreseeable future, there will just have to be a fundamental shift to the way we live our lives? So big sort of stadium events, organisations, the Hogmanay celebrations there would be in Edinburgh, they're just not on for the next few years.
Well, not necessarily the next few years, but hey, when we're getting a wave like this, don't we have to do something about it to kind of prevent the hospitals being overloaded, social care being overloaded. We need to do this. And this is our Dunkirk time. This is for us to come together as a community and take communal responsibility for this. This requires real good leadership to do this, people who walk the talk themselves. It requires employers to think about this. By the way, employers are really into hybrid working now. They're into allowing people to work partly from home and partly from a central office when they need to come in from time to time. This was happening, by the way, over the last several months anyway. We're going to move in that kind of direction. No, I don't think we should stop our lives. But come on, where's the harm in wearing a mask when you're in public places? Crazy stuff. That's just normal. You should just be doing that. Go into a restaurant, you wear a mask. You sit down, you eat without a mask. I mean, this is just common sense stuff. And in my former home in California, where you think it's a kind of freewheeling, freedom-loving state, very flexible and everything, what do? They're all wearing masks there. And, my friends and colleagues there are appalled at what they're hearing we're doing.
Well, that's fine. And it's great your daughter's here and her partner, that we wish them well and we welcome them. But I'm not sure we want to take lectures from too many people, because if you look at the figures in America, they're far worse than here.
No, they're bad in parts of America. I agree with you. But we all have to, Simon, we all have to just take responsibility as a community. One thing great about Britain is that we do come together at times of crisis. And I've lived here a long, long, long time now. And I love it. And I love the fact that we do that. And this is just another crisis period. This won't last forever. We have great scientists who will develop these multivariant vaccines. We will get out of this. But in the meantime, when waves occur for a short period of time, it's only going to be a short period of time. Let's be sensible. Let's work together. We affect other people. That's important to understand. It's not just about you. It's about your behavior and how it affects other human beings. If we kind of take that philosophy, like we did in getting tens of thousands of troops off the beaches in Dunkirk, that is the way we should behave now. It's not going to be forever, and we will get on top of this ultimately. But come on, let's look after one another. Britain is good at that, has been good at that in the past, but we're a little bit divided at the moment, and I think we don't have to be.
It's sort of a group hug, isn't it?
It is a group hug. Yeah, I love group hugs. And this is what we are. You
can take the man out of California.
Yeah, you're right. But what was great, Simon, for me is when we had the first wave, how all the neighbors in my neighborhood came together. We went outside. We kept distance. We had, eggnog. We had a wonderful time. That's the way we should be now. I think COVID fatigue has lessened that a bit, and it's made us a little bit more fractious. And not as community orientated as I think is our natural DNA. And I say "our," by the way, because I'm a dual citizen, right?
Oh,
I'm British, so there you are, mate.
No, you're one of us for sure. And it's good to hear some optimism. And Kerry, always good to talk to you, and a very Merry Christmas.
And you too, Rosie.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about the funding announced yesterday. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, pledged £1 billion, a business bailout for those hit hardest by the government's stealth lockdown, as some people are calling it. Although the Prime Minister insisted there would be no new restrictions before Christmas in England, his previous urge for caution and reduced social mixing has cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade. The Chancellor announced grants of up to £6,000 per premises for hospitality and tourist venues who've been left devastated after a wave of cancellations and no-shows due to COVID concerns.
Well, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline by some landlords experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas. Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now live from Lambley in Nottinghamshire. And just to explain, Will, what these new grants are exactly.
Good morning. Yes, as you say, from where I am in Lambley, outside the Robin Hood Inn, one of the pubs in this little Nottinghamshire village, these people are very happy to see the funding announced by the Chancellor Rishi Sunak yesterday. Let's go back to it. It's £1 billion in a few different ways that it'll be helping people, particularly people and businesses that work in the hospitality trade. So things like pubs, restaurants, theatres, leisure as well. Just to give you a bit of an idea about what it is and how it's going to help. Excuse me. So first of all, it's £1 billion, £6,000 up to £6,000 worth of eligible grants for each individual business. So that's going to particularly help the pubs, the restaurants and the bars, as I've just said. There's also £30 million that's going to be added to the Cultural Recovery Fund. So that's the thing that really helped out museums and some of those bigger art galleries during the difficult days of the pandemic. One of the things that's really good, a lot of people are saying, particularly for the hospitality trade, which relies on having those large numbers of people, the workforce that's significantly affected by the rising cases of Omicron, is that the government has announced it's going to be paying for sick pay. So any small to medium business with fewer than 250 employees is going to be able to claim on 2 weeks worth of sick pay for staff members. So who's this going to help, and who's actually quite excited about this? Well, as we've been saying, we've seen a massive drop in footfall since the new restrictions were introduced, since things like COVID passes became a part of nightclubs as well. And Hospitality UK has reported that some businesses, particularly pubs, are seeing 40 to 60% drop in trade over the last couple of weeks since we saw restrictions announced. We know from people that we've had on this channel that they're seeing a much greater drop in footfall, particularly people that are relying on those family meals that get together once a year at Christmas that have decided to cancel, a large part because of the advice from the government to reduce those amounts of contact that you're having with people, to reduce the amount of social situations that you've been putting yourself in. We've seen that yesterday the Prime Minister announced that there would be no new restrictions, but there's certainly been the advice to be cautious as we're seeing this rise in Omicron cases. And but back to pubs though, the Beer and Pub Industry Association has said that these restrictions, they will be help, but it's only a short-term package of support from the Chancellor, and it will be an extremely challenging period. We don't know what might happen in the future with things like lockdowns and further restrictions. We're seeing Europe go into a wave of new lockdowns in places like Netherlands and Germany as well. What might come in the new year and what new funding, we'll just have to wait until we see that announced.
Will, thank you very much. I know you're going to be updating us across the morning on this. And let's find out more, because Steve Latto is the owner of the Criterion pub in St Andrews, and John Hughes is the nighttime CIC liaison for local bars and local council for Liverpool. Thank you both for joining us. Steve, let's just start with you. £6,000, up to £6,000. What kind of a difference or a dent does that actually make on your finances?
So in Scotland, they've done it slightly different, as we seem to always do. So you get 6,800 if you're above 51,000 on your rateable value. If you're below 51,000, you get 4,500. We fall into the 4,500 category. And while if you are given £4,500 personally, it's a phenomenal amount of money. But when you look at it in business terms, it covered approximately 10% of my fixed and variable overheads for the month. So we've still got to find that extra 90% on trade that seems to be going through the floor at the moment. Last night we were 30% down on the night before, 50% down on the week before, and nowhere near our 2019 figures either.
John, in Liverpool, here we are, the week before Christmas. What is the experience of that footfall? Are people staying away?
The city centre has been empty for the last 3 days now. It's devastating. Obviously, since Chris Whitty's been on the TV and told everybody, not to go out, then you've got our leader telling everyone, oh, go out and enjoy yourself. And then you've got all these pictures of what's going on. No one believes anything. So everyone's listening to Chris Whitty. He's on the TV, every advert coming on telling no one to go out. So it's really devastating for our industry. The funding, what they're offering is, like the gentleman who's on there now, doesn't cover nothing. That'll probably pay for the satellite, Sky, BT, Amazon, everything else that you have now to try and get customers in.
Give us an idea. A bar in Liverpool on a Wednesday night tonight in the week of Christmas, how much would it expect to take, and what's the reality going to look like this evening?
Well, takings-wise, it's it all depends on the sizes. In the city centre, obviously, the nighttime economy or the hospitality is worth £5 billion to Liverpool as a city. And to take this away, we've been struggling now, obviously, for the last 2 years. So we lost a lot of staff through the Brexit. We've lost a lot of staff. Everyone's leaving our industry. And then now, obviously, when you've got staff and you haven't got hours to give them, so it's all right saying you're going to fund people when they're off sick. What about when they're perfectly well and you've got no hours to give them? How are they going to survive?
Let's go back to Scotland and Steve. What do you make of how Nicola Sturgeon is handling things there? Because it's not a nuanced difference, a considerable difference in the approach south of the border. We're getting a huge number of emails, people very angry about the approach in Wales and Scotland, which seems more draconian than that in England. Is that a feeling you pick up there?
It's more about the rhetoric that's coming out. Nicola Sturgeon in her statement yesterday intimated or told everybody to minimise all the contacts before and after Christmas. But yet still kept our businesses open. People will follow whatever she says. So, with the fact that at the moment football games are still on, that changes come Boxing Day. But last weekend we had 2 football matches, which in turn was 100,000 people that were there. But she was still saying the same thing of minimise contacts, but she allowed the football games to go. So, our restrictions are 1 metre. Distancing again that we've been put in place, and we've also got to we've been advised to give table service as well, which obviously puts a further strain on staffing sides of the business. So yeah, the mixed messaging is causing real issues up here and I believe down south as well.
Let's just bring you back in again. In Scotland, at least there is a little bit more clarity about what happens from the 26th of December onwards, but we don't have that in England. How are you advising bars, businesses in Liverpool for what to do for this time next week?
Yeah, but this is the problem you've got. I mean, this is what Boris done when the first lockdown. He come on the TV at 5 o'clock and said, you're shutting at 12. So in our position now, what do you buy more stock? Probably in Scotland and Wales, that they have got a clearer picture what's going on. But he's got this knacker coming on and then telling you within a couple of hours, this is going to change. So it's very difficult for people to plan, even promoters who might have nights on over the Christmas and everything. How can you plan? You got people travelling to come to events and that, and it's this. You don't know all the time what's going to be happening, but probably in Wales and Scotland, they have got a clearer picture of what's going on. We're just waiting and living in hope that we're going to carry on staying open without too many restrictions.
Yeah, that is part of the problem. Well, thank you both very much for speaking to us, John and Steve. And with whatever happens in the next few days, we wish you a very happy Christmas here.
Coming up, our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson brings us the latest on those new restrictions for Wales. That's after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine Further west, always more cloud, outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again, and that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into a Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west, double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day, things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast, more rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Our show's gonna start soon. Won't be too long. I'm leaving work now. People around Christmas. Oh no. Seriously?
Oh, don't worry. Mommy will be back soon. Besides, we can record the show for her.
It's not the same if she's not here. What the? Oh my goodness. Don't worry, I'm a nurse.
We're on in 30 seconds.
I don't suppose you can sing, can you?
Mommy? That's Mommy! Whoa!
Your perfect diamond engagement ring and experience Love Lumber's bespoke same-day diamond engagement rings at Lumber's Jewelers.
Are you a director in the construction industry? Has COVID changed how you keep stakeholders informed of the progress of your development? In one place is your very own tailor-made community engagement app. Designed by Virtual Viewing, the app lets you tell people the latest news and updates, give access to 3D maps and plans, warn locals of possible disruption, list recruitment opportunities, and so much more. All in one place. Discover more at virtualviewing.com.
From our beach to yours. Four citrus peels mingle with coastal grown rosemary, the dew of the sea, as fresh as a coastal breeze. The award-winning Pembrokeshire Gin Company. Craft distilled in Wales and inspired by the sea.
I'm breathless, I don't know why. It's 26 minutes past, it's because I got up for a moment, that's why. 26 minutes past 7, you're watching the Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon.
Now, we've given you an overview of England and Scotland, but now Wales. The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, is going to outline his plans for COVID restrictions after Christmas later on today. Omicron cases in Wales are predicted to reach several thousand by Boxing Day, with a number of different measures being considered to tackle the spread.
Well, our Wales reporter, Lily Hewitson, is across the story. She joins us now live from Cardiff. So a lot of speculation on what's going to be announced. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, that's right, Simon. Usually I would have had a bit of an inkling last night about what is going to be announced today by the First Minister, but this morning I really am none the wiser. We do know that the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, will address the nation later on today, just after midday, to outline his plans for COVID restrictions here in Wales after Christmas. But it's those finer details that we're not too sure about just yet. But there is a kind of an inclination that it might be concerning the hospitality industry here in Wales. So measures after Christmas could include things like the rule of 6 at tables in pubs, perhaps table service again, which of course we saw earlier on this year and last year. His announcement may even include indoor mixing and a return of household bubbles, but it's currently unclear if people will be advised to kind of see a certain number of people or whether that could become law. We don't yet know that just yet. We do know that ministers aren't expected to kind of impose any kind of lockdown at the moment over Christmas in particular, which we saw last year. This is primarily focusing on, restrictions after Christmas from Boxing Day onwards. Now, last week we saw it was announced that nightclubs in Wales will shut from the 27th of December, and also that workplaces and shops will have to implement those 2-metre social distancing rules once again. So it kind of feels like COVID measures are trickling back into our lives here in Wales, although we're still at alert level 0, so I don't know yet if there'll be kind of any changes in that, perhaps if Wales were to go back up to alert level 1 again.
Lily, we'll be back to you later on, but for now, thank you very much. That's Lily Hewitson there in Cardiff.
Now, it's coming up to 7:30. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has announced there will be no new restrictions introduced before Christmas, but he didn't rule out the possibility of further restrictions later down the road. But the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, said that sooner rather than later restrictions would be better to protect the NHS, condemning the government's concern for a Tory rebellion and party politics over the health of its public. Labour previously backed the Prime Minister's vaccine passport rules for England when 99 of his own MPs opposed them. The leader, Sir Keir Starmer, vowed his party would support future restrictions as they would be in the national interest.
Let's talk to Jonathan Ashworth, MP, Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary with the Labour Party, of course, joins us now. Good morning to you.
Hi there, good morning.
So Christmas, for those of us in England, is on. Do you share that sense of relief?
None of us would want to see restrictions through the Christmas period. And the British people have been doing the right thing. They have been limiting their social interactions so that they don't catch the virus and pass it on to their loved ones over Christmas. They've been queuing up outside the vaccine centres to get the booster. And I think Boris Johnson, if he was going to have introduced anything over Christmas, he missed his window of opportunity because he sort of divvied and delayed. So as it happens, I think because the British people have been sensible and they are showing leadership themselves, it does look like the infection rates have plateaued over the last couple of days. It's still a high level infection, of course. Let's watch those infection rates like a hawk. I think the issue now, though, is that everybody is anticipating that something will happen after Christmas. Indeed, that's the briefing from the government sources to newspapers. Briefings to newspapers isn't good enough. I think businesses who need to order stock for post-Christmas in the run-up to New Year's Eve need clarity. We all need to know where we stand. So we'll urge Boris Johnson to outline what he anticipates comes next. We'd all understand it if he says we think we need to do X, Y, and Z, and then when we get after Christmas, he says, actually, it doesn't look like it's needed after all. But I think people just need a sense of direction. Instead, we get more sort of dither and delay from the Prime Minister.
So you wouldn't criticise the Prime Minister for saying now there's going to be restrictions, all those businesses then don't order whatever they need, and then he changes his mind?
Well, first of all, I think people just need to know where they stand. I mean, we're in the worst of all worlds at the moment, that We know that we've got a business, Christmas, we don't have restrictions, but businesses don't know where they stand post-Christmas. And of course, a lot of businesses in the hospitality sector, restaurants, bars, have taken a real hammering this week or so because people have restricted their interactions. The financial package that was announced isn't going to go far enough to support a lot of businesses, and it's certainly not going to support those workers who are going to lose hours, who if they're on 0 hours contracts or their hours are cut back, they're going to lose wages. And I think we just need some clarity about what the financial package will be and what the restrictions are likely to look like post-Christmas in the run-up to New Year's Eve. We can't leave people in limbo. We just need that certainty from the Prime Minister today.
You can't have it both ways because, as you say, it appears at the moment to have plateaued. The government has to wait for the latest data before they make that next decision. Many will applaud the Prime Minister for saying, well, look, let's get through Christmas and then we're going to have to make a decision on what we have available to us information-wise then. That's the right approach, isn't it? We're getting so many emails from Wales and Scotland from people saying, how can our leaders in Wales and Scotland tell us what we can't do this early on? But whilst that's certainty, it's not necessarily the right certainty.
Well, we're just asking for a map, if you like. And remember, when we came into winter, before we knew about this variant, we had the Plan A and the Plan B map. And the government said, look, if things get worse, we can move to Plan B. And this is what Plan B looks like, masks on in shops and so on. So that principle of setting out options for the next stage, so people know what the next stage looks like, is one that has been established by the government. And we're just asking the government to give people certainty about what the next stage could be. And at the moment, though, I take the point you are making, but look at the newspapers. There's all kinds of briefings from government insiders and sources in government saying, well, we've saved Christmas, but New Year's Eve is going to be stuffed. That's not good enough. That's not fair to pubs and restaurants and theatres and so on. In my constituency here in Leicester and across the country, people who have struggled this year trying to make ends meet. Christmas and the New Year period is really, really important for pubs and restaurants, and they're going to take a hit. They need a bit of a sense of where they think things are going to be post-Christmas, and that's what we're calling for.
It could be argued that Boris Johnson's actually had quite a crafty strategy in that he and Professor Chris Whitty have nudged the public sufficiently to have to prevent putting in very restrictive measures.
Well, it's certainly true that the British public have shown some leadership, and they have restricted their interactions because they don't want to catch it and they don't want to pass it on to their loved ones over Christmas. They're getting the booster jabs. It's really, really good. Of course, the downside of the British public doing what they were asked to do is, of course, our hospitality sector suffered a real hit at what should be one of the busiest times of the year. And workers are actually going to lose out because a lot of people who work in pubs and restaurants this time of year are on limited hours. Their hours are going to be reduced. And part of the problem with the package that was announced yesterday is that it's going to quickly become out of date because it doesn't support those workers who are losing out. There are a lot of pubs and restaurants saying the grants, which better than nothing, obviously, aren't going to be enough to cover their losses. And if more restrictions do come in, we're going to need more in that economic package as well. So I've got nothing but praise for the way the British public have responded, but I want the government to support our business sector properly and to give our business sectors clarity for the next stage.
Well, Jonathan Ashworth, it's good of you to join us, and may we wish you a Merry Christmas, and we will be talking again in the new year, I'm sure. But for now, thank you very much. Yeah. Good to see you. Thanks.
I think he was saying have a good Christmas.
He was. We cut him off.
As ever, it's important to stress you can get in touch with us. So your views on the restrictions or not in Scotland, Wales and England, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the way to do that. But coming up here on the programme, it is Britain's biggest ever divorce settlement as Dubai's ruler is ordered to pay his wife £554 million. We'll tell you why after this.
This Christmas, your donation can bring a child one step closer to home. Search Gosh Christmas or text HOME to 70125 to give £5 today.
When I don't know what to do.
Search Gosh Christmas or text HOME to 70125 to give £5 today. Thank you.
When it comes to COVID testing for travel, Project Screen is a highly rated provider. We have the travel tests for you, whether it's a PCR test near you or a day 2 arrivals test. Our home test kits include next day delivery or visit one of our local testing pods. Book today at projectscreen.co.uk. Tests are reliable, results are fast, and there is customer support along the way. Project Screen by Pronetics, getting Britain back to travel.
We've Christmas gifts for him, for her, for the little ones and the big ones. We've lights, decorations, wreaths and crackers. Ho, 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 how festive. Stores in Aberdare, St Mellons, Cardiff, Caerphilly, Rogerstone and Cwmbran. Or visit what-shop.co.uk to find out more.
Are you struggling with slow or unreliable broadband? Devolved Telecom's 4G broadband could be just what you need. Our team of professional engineers offer full installation at your home or business, and as we use the Noble network, there's no need for a landline. Government grants are also available to cover your installation and equipment costs. Give slow broadband the red card and contact Devolved Telecom today for a free, no-obligation visit and test at your home or business.
This Christmas, your donation to Gosh Charity can bring a child one step closer to home. Search Gosh Christmas.
Hello and welcome back to the programme. It is 20 minutes to 8 now.
You do cheer us up with your smiling, you know. Doesn't
well,
she? Isn't it great to see us smiling?
The question would be why I'm smiling and what happens just, you know, when you hear that lovely music to say the Great British Breakfast is coming up and that lovely logo. What's happening behind the scenes over here? And then I get told off for laughing.
No, we're just saying. Lots of people saying it's really nice to see smiling faces in the morning, that's all.
That's true.
Touchy.
We have had some good news, though, particularly if you're in England and in Scotland as well, because it looks like, and Wales, Christmas goes ahead. What we don't know, really, is the uncertainty is from Boxing Day onwards. And the other little bit of good news, particularly if you've got friends or family who have been isolating, is that the isolation number of days cuts from 10 to 7 days. Now, you have to do a lateral flow test that's negative on day 6 and day 7. I'm very acutely aware of all the rules because my poor housemate has coronavirus, so that's been a complete nightmare.
Well, she's not your housemate now because you won't go into the house.
No, so I'm not. I'm currently, well, I was without a place to stay, but not for very long. So that's another bit of positive news. And for many families who thought they couldn't spend Christmas Day together, they've had 2 pieces of news which may mean they can now legally do so. And also, anyone who is self-isolating could join them. So there is things to smile about.
Yeah, and we're asking well, we've been doing a story about what the best Christmas Day is. What's yours? GBViews@gbnews.uk. Give us a reason to smile more. I'd just like to see how you spend your Christmas Day. What are the routines? Those little things that families do that actually go from generation to generation after a while, whether it's getting out the Monopoly after lunch and then having a huge row about it.
I don't really think the people really play Monopoly on Christmas Day. Apparently, the average family has 18 arguments on Christmas Day. I think if you had Monopoly out, you may significantly bump that up.
Well, the board may not stay on the table forever, but...
Let us know.
Yeah, I'm trying to cheer everyone up, and you're talking about rows, honestly.
GBViews@gbnews.uk.
Right. Now, well, the UK economy is in the news, of course. It's also getting figures for its growth, and they're at a slower pace than first thought between July and September. These are figures from the Office for National Statistics, and they show that the economy grew at 1.1%, which is worse than expected. The ONS blamed the slower growth on much weaker than expected performances from the health industry, hairdressers, and the energy sector, contracting more than previously estimated.
And now the Bank of England has fined Metro Bank almost £5.4 million over the quality of its reporting and governance failures. The central bank's Prudential Regulation Authority watchdog confirmed it imposed the penalty on the bank over failings between May 2016 and January 2019.
Well, you're watching the Great British Breakfast. Let's just remind you what else is going on today. And the man accused of fatally stabbing Sir David Amos and charged with terrorism offences has pleaded not guilty. The Conservative MP was killed during a constituency surgery in Essex in October. 25-year-old Ali Harbi Ali is charged with his murder and with preparing acts of terrorism between May 2019 and September of this year. A full trial is due to be held in March.
The Metropolitan Police is being accused of aiding and abetting a criminal offence over its handling of an alleged Downing Street Christmas party in December of last year. Now, the Met is under investigation by the Independent Office for Police Conduct after an official complaint. Baroness Jones of Moulsecoombe claims officers guarding Downing Street deliberately failed to enforce the law. Officials and advisers are alleged to have made speeches, they were drinking wine and exchanged secret Santa gifts at the event during lockdown.
Israel says it plans to become the first country to roll out a fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine as the country prepares for a wave of infections driven by that new Omicron variant. Israel's pandemic experts have recommended a fourth booster for the over 60s and health workers. It comes as Israel confirmed the first known death of a patient with the Omicron strain on Tuesday.
Rail services across the country are being cancelled in the run-up to Christmas because of rising numbers of staff falling ill with coronavirus. Avanti West Coast, Cross Country, LNER, ScotRail, West Midlands Railway, they've all reported cancellations. And in the past week, over 5% of trains were cancelled versus normally an average of 2.9%, according to the Rail Delivery Group.
Andrew Lloyd Webber has said he is devastated to have halted his latest musical, Cinderella, for 7 weeks as Omicron plays havoc with live events. The West End show will return as soon as this wave is licked, the composer and producer said, with a return currently scheduled for the 9th of February. It's the first major production to be put on ice for such an extended period.
Well, several tourist attractions in London have temporarily had to close because of staff shortages caused by rising COVID cases. The John Soanes Museum in Holborn said it will be shut from Wednesday for at least a week as it can no longer staff the venue safely and effectively. The Natural History Museum, the Foundling Museum, the National Army Museum and the Wellcome Collection have also closed for the festive break. Many theatres and hospitality venues have had to shut their doors.
In sport, Eddie Nketiah scored a hat-trick to steer Arsenal past Sunderland and into the Carabao Cup, the semi-finals there, with a 5-1 victory. Arsenal will discover their last 4 opponents on Wednesday when the draw takes place after Tottenham host West Ham.
And let's give you a very brief look at the weather. A cold start today. We're going to see cloud build up from the west and spells of rain across much of the UK. These may fall heavy in the west and the north, but the southeast will stay drier.
We've just had an email. What makes me happy on Christmas Day? This is from Gaz. Easy, he says. Brussels sprouts covered in Marmite.
Oh. What?
Well, we asked a moment ago, what's your perfect Christmas day? And he said, Brussels sprouts covered in Marmite.
I mean, that's exceptionally unconventional.
And pretty disgusting.
That's true. Marmite's all right, and sprouts. I wouldn't necessarily combine the two. Keep your messages coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, I've had another one.
Oh, yes.
Liz, I'm 68 years old. I've done my fair share of Christmas dinners for my children and grandchildren. These days, my husband and I get a takeaway curry on Christmas Eve, and that's what we eat on Christmas Day. No cooking and minimal washing up. Heaven, she says.
And then no arguments over how to cook the turkey as well, I guess. But a curry takeaway.
There must be a joke there about sprouts somewhere, but I'm not going to do it. Anyway, thank you for those. They're coming in thick and fast. We want to know what makes your Christmas routine. What would other families look at you and say, really? Let us know.
Well, now, moving on, the ruler of Dubai has been ordered to pay around £550 million to his former wife and their 2 children in what is now Britain's biggest ever divorce settlement. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum will have to now pay a lump sum of £251.5 million to his 6th wife, Princess Haya. She fled the United Arab Emirates for England in 2019, claiming she was terrified of her husband after she discovered that he'd previously abducted 2 of his other daughters and found out about her affair with a British bodyguard.
Will Geddes is a security and terror expert and joins us now. Will, good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's a huge settlement. The irony, of course, is that most of it's going to be spent on security, and the man paying for the security is paying for it because it's security against him.
Yes, absolutely. And this is not the first time where security has figured as a very, very large part of a divorce settlement. But in this particular instance, Simon, there is a very good credibility for why that security has to be so immense and have so many different parts to it, because of obviously Sheikh Maktoum's previous history of how he's dealt with his children when they have tried to leave, obviously, the United Arab Emirates.
And give us an idea, what does that security look like? How is she and how her children going to be protected?
Well, the first thing that we would generally do is to do a risk assessment. And as his previous daughters had obviously been captured, one which was actually in Cambridge the last time she was seen, that's Princess Shamsa in 2000. And the other was obviously Princess Latifah when she was on a yacht trying to escape to Pakistan. The security, obviously, for Princess Hi and her children here in the United Kingdom meant that if you are up against an adversary who has limitless resources, you have to apply quite a lot. And so it's not just bodyguards. There are many other different elements that you have to include, including counter-surveillance, which would be to looking at a capability that potentially, and I say allegedly, obviously the opponent might deploy to try and configure or try and plan, again, an abduction of children. And therefore, I think it was quite justified in this instance. But these things don't come cheap, as you can imagine.
In many ways. I mean, one of the aspects of this case, and the judge expressed his frustration with this, is she had an affair with one of her bodyguards, and then three of those bodyguards then blackmailed her for millions of pounds so that they wouldn't tell him about the affair. Now, the judge said it was wrong that they'd got away with it, which they have. But the relationship between security and their principals, it's always been a complicated thing, hasn't it?
It is a complicated thing, Simon, but again, those security officers that lose sight of what their principal role is, and that is to protect their principal, their charge, are obviously the unprofessional ones. And inevitably, like in any industry, you're going to get those rogues that are going to want to advantage themselves. But again, inevitably, it's a very small sector. There are many, many close protection officers, not only in this country, but across the world, but it is a tightly knit network. And those that have been responsible for being unethical, immoral, or illegal, as we could potentially conclude in this case, will find it highly unlikely to ever work again.
And just tell us about, the prospects of the children involved in this. How are they going to be protected?
Well, I think it's inevitable until such time as the threat has subsided. And that may not be for a considerable period of time, because inevitably, and I've been involved in some similar cases myself in the past, there may always be a desire by the father or by the mother in certain instances, obviously, to have their children repatriated to them. So the security around the children will probably be there for some time, but they're quite young right now. So one of the advantages is the children will get used to having close protection, having secure drivers, having a schedule and a routine to a certain extent. And I say a routine because that's actually the last thing you want to do in a security capacity. You want to be as random, as difficult to pin down as possible. But they'll be used to having this fabric of security around them probably for many, many years to come. Certainly bearing in mind the two daughters of the Sheikh were certainly in their early 20s when they were taken.
There's actually a provision in the divorce settlement for cyber security as well, and that's important given that they found out that not only was her phone hacked, but also that of her lawyer, the Baroness Shackleton.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the infamous Pegasus software created by a company called NOS in Israel that used this particular software to invade many, many important people around the world's phones and devices. And it would enable them to turn on the cameras, turn on the microphones, read every single message, record any calls that obviously the person might be utilizing. So there was a high level of sophistication. And the UAE is a very technically and cyber advanced nation. So they will have a lot of capability, not only in-house, in-country, but externally that they can recruit. And again, Simon, if you've got deep pockets, you can spend as much as you like if you want to find out information. And regrettably, if you go to the dark side, as we would call it in our industry, and you spend that money to obtain illegal and criminal software that can invade people's devices, then yes, there needs to be a sufficient budget to counter that threat.
Will, it's always good to talk to you. Have a great Christmas. I'm guessing you're giving everybody, milk tray, judging by your outfit?
Always, Simon. You know it's a standard on my Christmas list.
It looks like you're off to work. All you need is the balaclava and you're off. Well, it's good to see you. Ken is our security expert there.
Now, it's 9 minutes to 8. Coming up, what makes the perfect Christmas day? We'll let you know next.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine. Further west, always more cloud outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again. And that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west. Double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast. More rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. 5 minutes to 8.
The Duxford Imperial War Museum has assembled the largest collection of submarine Spitfire aircraft. Submarines.
Submarine Spitfires. Oh,
I don't think that's confusing. Supermarine Spitfire aircraft under one roof. A total of 12 aircraft will be on display, including some of the first Spitfires to see combat. We can see some of them.
We can. Our East England reporter, Amelia Harper, is at the Duxford Aerodrome for us this morning. They're all above ground, above water, in fact, this morning. Amelia, over to you.
Well, isn't this absolutely phenomenal? We're inside one of the hangars here, and this, Simon, is honestly every little kid's dream, or actually, to be fair, any age. We're in and amongst nearly 12 Spitfires, which are going to be assembled here for this exhibition. It's just honestly, standing in amongst history is just incredible. They were, over 20,000 of them were built between 1937 to 1947. And my guest may correct me on this in 1 second, but I believe they were the only Allied frontline fighter to be in continuous use and development all the way through World War II. So I'll introduce you to my guest. This is Graham Rogers. He is in charge of visitor engagement here. So, Graham, just tell me about this collection. How did it all come together? And just give us an idea of the history that we're standing amongst.
Well, there is quite a bit. I mean, it's quite nice. I mean, we're in a building here, this conservation area of airspace building here at Duxford. It's a baseline about the size of a football pitch, and 10 to 12 airworthy Spitfires under one building. It is pretty exciting for us. I don't know anywhere else in the world where you will get that. Conservatively, 50 to 60 million pounds worth of aeroplanes. So please do come and see them. We have the Mark 1 Spitfire, spent most of its life under the sand in Calais after it was shot down in the Battle of Britain. We have here a Mark 14 Spitfire, one of the last painted to represent the colours of Johnny Johnson, the high-scoring Spitfire ace to survive the war. So, yes, quite a fantastic and pretty exciting collection for us here at Duxford.
Amazing. And the Spitfires started off as Mark 1, and then they moved all the way and developed to become Mark 24, which I believe was about double as powerful and twice as heavy as the original Mark 1. Just tell me about some of the sort of adaptations that perhaps changed from the Mark 1 to the Mark 24.
Yes, certainly. The Mark 1 was designed by a genius of a gentleman called Reginald Mitchell, who was a very poorly man by the time he was 42, and unfortunately only ever got to saw the prototype fly. So we have the very pretty Mark 1 behind you. We know all our Spitfires by the registration. So we have Spitfire N3200. There are only 4 Mark 1 Spitfires airworthy in the world that I'm aware of, and 3 of them are here at Duxford. All the way through to Mark 24, and between Marks 1 and 24, we went from a 27-litre V12 in a Rolls-Royce Merlin to the 36.9-litre engine in a Rolls-Royce Griffon, as you quite rightly say, Amelia. Mark 24 from a Mark 1 in 7, 8, 9 years of production, you got nearly double the, well, more than double the power and nearly twice the weight as well. You went from a top speed of 360 to 450 miles an hour in level flight.
Well, it's absolutely just amazing. And just finally, how can people come and see it here, and how long is this exhibition on for?
We're open from the 27th of December right through to the 20th of February. Yeah, so people, please do come and visit. Like I say, it's the probably in the world that you can see over the Christmas holidays. Families, welcome, please come. Your safety is paramount, of course. We've got a huge, massive area, like I say, the size of a football pitch. So please do come, and we're up until the 20th of February with this exhibition.
Brilliant. Well, I might even pop back once again, because this is just absolutely incredible just to be standing in amongst this amazing history. I hope you can enjoy, Simon and Rosie, some of the view behind me. It's just amazing.
It is. Thank you very much. A supermarine Spitfire there.
Thank you, Simon.
You just said I'm an innovator. They could have gone underwater, yes. Anyway, we'll be back in just a moment. Very good morning. It is 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Now, Britain gets a double COVID boost as the self-isolation period is cut to 7 days. And the Prime Minister Boris Johnson declares that Christmas in England is on. But with the New Year lockdown looming, how are you feeling? Let us know. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
The Chancellor Rishi Sunak is being accused by some of not doing enough to help businesses hit by the rise in COVID cases after refusing to bring back furlough. Do you think Rishi Sunak has got this right?
In Wales, going to work is going to be made a crime with a £60 fine for anyone who goes to the office unnecessarily. You can still go to the pub. Does that make sense? How are they going to enforce that?
What's your idea of the perfect Christmas? We'll share the findings of a new poll on the perfect recipe for the perfect day on Christmas Day.
Well, welcome back to the programme. Now, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has announced there will be no new COVID restrictions in England before Christmas this year, but he didn't rule out the possibility of introducing them later.
Naturally, we can't rule out any further measures after Christmas, and we're going to keep a constant eye on the data. But in view of the continuing uncertainty about several things, severity of Omicron, uncertainty about the hospitalisation rate or the impact of the vaccine rollout and the boosters, we don't think today that there is enough evidence to justify any tougher measures before Christmas.
Well, meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister has announced that from Boxing Day, all outdoor events will be limited to just 500 people. That'll be for a period of 3 weeks to help slow down the spread of the Omicron variant in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon confirmed that that also means the cancellation of Edinburgh's world-famous Hogmanay street party, and football matches will also become effectively spectator-free. She stressed that advice for Christmas Day still stands, but that family gatherings should be kept as small and safe as possible.
A time when these services are already under severe pressure and also dealing with high staff absences, limiting large-scale events will help them focus on delivering essential services to the public. So I would ask the public, despite the disappointment I know this decision will generate, to please understand the reasons for it.
So, two different approaches. Sir John Curtis joins us now, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Thank you very much for your time. It is probably fair to say, over the last 18 months or so, Nicola Sturgeon has taken a more hardline approach than Boris Johnson.
That's certainly been the general inclination of the Scottish Government. So, for example, even when we were moving towards almost the end of measures during the summer, it happened in Scotland some weeks later than that in England. And indeed, if we were to go back to the summer of 2020, for a while, the Scottish Government was hoping to more or less eradicate coronavirus. It certainly got the numbers down very low, lower than they ever were in England, although in the end, that aspiration wasn't fulfilled. And the truth, of course, is that even with the supposed end of regulations in the summer, the truth is the Plan B, over which the UK government and their MPs agonised last week, Plan B has always been in place in Scotland. Indeed, it's always been in place in most of the devolved territories. So mask wearing has just simply long become part of the social fabric of life in Scotland. It's not had to be reintroduced. It was always been in place for going into indoor locations.
Is there any evidence that that approach is working? The suspicion amongst some, and we're seeing a bit of this in Wales with Mark Draper too, is there's a bit of politics being played here?
Well, there is some politics. The politics, of course, Simon, is that insofar as the devolved administrations want to introduce measures such as closing nightclubs, as in Wales, or closing, in effect, football matches, as in Scotland and indeed also in Wales, that their ability to provide financial compensation for business is relatively limited. They can try to do it within their own budget, which the Scottish Government is doing to some degree. But if the UK government, and in particular the Treasury, is not willing to offer compensation, then the ability of the devolved administrations to introduce measures is potentially limited. In fact, now, given that the Treasury has now begun to offer compensation in Scotland, another part of the measure yesterday is the enforcement of social distancing in hospitality. It was already advised, it's now going to be enforced. And of course, that will reduce the number of tables they can have. As to whether or not the course of the pandemic is proceeding very differently in the two various parts of the UK, very difficult to say. I think at the moment I'm probably correct in saying that the level in Scotland is somewhat lower than it is in England, and it has been for some time. but whether or not the differences of measures, which at the end of the day are A, relatively marginal, and B, in Scotland, are as much to do with people being given guidance as opposed to legal enforcement. So, the Scottish government has simply said for the last 2 weeks, stay at home as much as you can. It's the extent to which people respond to that that's probably at the moment more crucial amongst the measures that have been taken anywhere inside the UK, as opposed to the particular legal situation.
Is there a sense in which this is Nicola Sturgeon saying to Boris Johnson, look at me, I'm making decisions, I'm decisive, I'm going to move first?
Well, what is true, Rosie, we can argue about motivation. What is true is that there isn't any disagreement within the SNP and therefore within the Scottish government about the taking of measures. There isn't a group of people who feel that ideologically that shutting down the country, imposing strict public health measures is something that they are opposed to on principle. And to that extent, at least, the Scottish government feels able perhaps to follow the advice of its advisors when they are being given advice to limit. So certainly, for example, Jason Leach, the Scottish clinical director, is on the record as saying that I was worried about large groups, and I think you can understand that's why large gatherings in Scotland are now going to be banned, both indoors and outdoors. In contrast, if the stories we are told is correct, the UK cabinet is divided at the moment. That's why on Monday it couldn't tell you about what was going to happen on Christmas Day, but yesterday it was. Now, none of us know who's right or who's wrong about this, and I think everybody is acknowledging there are some pretty fine judgments to be made. But as it were, the balance of inclination within the Scottish government, the politicians within the Scottish government, is different from that of those inside the UK government. And that is when we get around to the various public inquiries, we may get some final judgment as to which of the two was making the better call.
Just talk about the UK government, though. I mean, if Boris Johnson wants a nightmare just before Christmas, he just needs to look at his polling.
Yes, I mean, but I think the truth is, well, the difficulties insofar as the Prime Minister's polling is now pretty dire, and it's not yet quite as dire as that of John Major or Gordon Brown at their worst, but it's not far better. Around a quarter now, people saying they think that he's doing well. That, of course, is not to do so much with the handling of the coronavirus this year as the handling of coronavirus in and around 10 Downing Street last year. The various pictures and scenarios we've now seen of events and allegations taking place inside 10 Downing Street has undoubtedly caused a very substantial backlash of disapproval within the UK public. And the truth is that Labour cry of one law for them and one law for the rest of us is now biting home in such a way that the public do now have doubts about this government's ethics and about its competence. And of course, the potential problem is that therefore the public will therefore no longer trust the advice that comes from Boris Johnson, not only about coronavirus, but frankly, the claims the government might make in the next 2 years about the effectiveness policy more broadly. The problem that Mr. Johnson has to worry about is he is facing the risk of a significant credibility gap.
Yeah, and that is the real damage of this, isn't it? All that remains is to wish you a very happy Christmas. What's your perfect Christmas day? I mean, do you have a routine?
Well, the truth is, Simon, this is my first year that my wife, who started a new career in her 60s, is an ordained deacon in the Scottish Episcopal Church. So Christmas is pretty busy doing services, which is still allowed to do. We're having a break immediately after. We're hopefully in a remote part of Scotland with my daughter and her family. And fingers crossed, we're still going to be allowed to do that.
Yeah, and whatever happens, John, we'll find you. We'll find you.
I'm sure that's true these days, absolutely.
Have a great time. And John, thank you for everything this year, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you.
That sounds totally wonderful. 10 minutes past 8. Now, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has pledged £1 billion as a business bailouts for those hit hardest by the government's, what some people are calling stealth lockdown. Now, although the Prime Minister insisted there would be no restrictions in England before Christmas, his previous urge for caution and to reduce social mixing has cost many businesses valuable Christmas trade. The Chancellor announced grants of up to £6,000 per premise for hospitality and tourist venues have been left devastated after a wave of cancellations and no-shows because of COVID concerns.
Well, that new pot of funding for pubs is being described as a lifeline by some landlords, experiencing a huge drop in footfall ahead of Christmas. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now live from Lambley in Nottinghamshire. And, Will, you can explain what these new grants are and what they effectively mean.
Good morning. Yes, from Lambley in Nottinghamshire, a little village about a couple of miles outside of the city of Nottingham, from outside of the Robin Hood Inn. In an hour or two, we'll be joining the landlord inside to hear what he says. He's told me over the phone that he is very excited to see some funding. Whether it goes far enough, we've heard different landlords and pub associations on this programme today saying it doesn't. It's been described as a drop in the ocean, but it's certainly what was needed, at least for this moment, to stop a lot of people getting quite upset. We've seen over the last 2 to 3 weeks restrictions come into force as the Omicron variant has spread throughout the UK and large parts of the world. Yesterday's cases was another quite a significant number, 92,000. And so that's why this £1 billion extra pot of grants has been introduced by the Chancellor Rishi Sunak. We know from last week he came back earlier from his trip to California, came back because he was hearing so much about the problems that the hospitality industry was facing here. Hospitality UK has described the figures as significantly damaging, 40 to 60% decline in trade for some places, and we know that in much parts of the country, many businesses, particularly pubs, restaurants, that were expecting busy Christmas periods, they've been seeing some difficulties. So let's just go back into what those restrictions are. The largest part of the pot of money, that £1 billion, is going for grants that leisure and hospitality businesses can apply for. It's up to £6,000. There are different rates depending on the size of the business, depending on the business rates of the individual business. Some people have described it, some people in some businesses have described it favouring the larger, bigger chains because they might have higher business rates. So that's the first initial one, up to £6,000, which is going to help at least in the shorter term. There's also £30 million for the Culture Recovery Fund. We saw last year a lot of funding coming out of hospitality, but it was £2 billion, including this fund that's just been released, £2 billion that's been pumped into the arts sector. So that's things like museums and art galleries. So that's another part of this pot of funding. The next part is quite interesting. It comes in for sickness. We're seeing a lot of people having to take time off work because they've had their positive tests, whether on a lateral flow or a PCR, and that means that there's going to be a lot of places that are losing out on their pay because they're going to have to be paying quite a significant financial contribution to sick pay. So 250 employees or fewer, those small to medium businesses, they can claim up to 2 weeks worth of COVID-related sicknesses. As I said, pubs are in a real tricky position. They really rely on those staff members to be able to pour those pints. Even in some parts of the country, pubs, although they're seeing a significant shortfall, you need people to serve the customers that are hardy enough to come out and have had the protection that they think is necessary, double vaccination, a booster, that means that they are choosing to go out. You still need people to be able to serve them. But there is a large drop in the amount of people that are coming out. 3 million pub visits cancelled in 1 weekend. Now, as you might remember from earlier in this report, I'm going to be going inside, speaking to the landlord of the Robin Hood Inn, one of the few pubs here in Lambley, and we're going to be finding out what he thinks about the new funding, if it's going to match the restrictions.
Will, a comprehensive answer to many questions. Thank you very much. Good to see you this morning.
Well, let's find out more. Sohail Ahmed is the owner of Eggoland, an egg-based restaurant in London. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Just explain to us, what has trade been like over the last week, 10 days or so?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, thanks for having me on the show. Well, the trade has been it's been crazy. You know, it's a new restaurant. I mean, I was already trying to make it happen and make it successful, and I still am. But there is no footfall, and especially with the new variant and the new restrictions that came out to place a week ago or something. It's really hit the business really badly because there is no customers. My business have come down to like about 60-70% decline in the business, and it's hit us really badly. Not just myself, and there's loads of us, thousands of others like me, who are suffering from the same problem.
I mean, Eggoland, you're an egg-based restaurant. I'm just wondering, financially, what is the hit in this lack of footfall? Does what Rishi Sunak is promising, does that go any way to help?
I mean, look, you can claim up to £6,000. Of course, we have to be grateful for everything that they can give us, but of course, it won't do that much of a difference. I mean, obviously, it will sort something out, but it's look, I've got about 8 people that's working in Eggoland, and they keep on getting sick because they keep on someone they've come in contact with that have had corona or something like that. So I've always constantly have to deal with this kind of problems. And, I've got rent to pay. I've got quite a high rent and quite high business rate and staff wages and costs and everything. So far I'm paying everything from my pocket. So this new bailout that Rishi Sunak has promised, let's see, if I'm sure he can do a bit better than that, but it's something. So, of course, we're grateful.
Sohail, thank you so much for talking to us and just laying it really clear for us, the sort of practicalities of what it's been like over the last few days. Really appreciate your time.
Right, let's talk to Andrew Pearce, consultant editor. Are you ready?
Sorry.
Just
making sure my phone's off. Trying to be professional.
Really?
Having walked onto the set talking.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, sorry.
Wasn't that you were? Yeah, anyway. So Rishi Sunak, sort of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't in a way. But the criticism seems to be too little, too late. And people actually want the reintroduction of furlough.
Yeah, look, £6,000 is nothing, is it? Because I think it costs probably some businesses £10,000 to close down and then another £10,000 to open, so £6,000 is not very much. The encouragement, though, for somebody like me who doesn't think we should have any more restrictions is it suggests to me that they are not planning more closures in the next couple of weeks.
Well, it's not the message we're getting from Boris Johnson. The impression we get is that as soon as Christmas is done,
I don't buy
whack.
it. Because I tell you why, Simon, I don't think Tory MPs will let him. We know 9 cabinet ministers were against, in the cabinet meeting this week, 3-hour meeting, were against any more restrictions. I suspect that if you want to talk about the parliamentary party, the Tory party, I suspect it's 80% of the parliamentary party. There isn't the data yet to show that we need to shut down the economy, although we've almost done it already. Why do we need any more restrictions? You go outside, Paddington's deserted, where I work at Kensington,
made the decision for
They've made the decision. And that's right. We're grown up. We don't need nanny state to keep telling us what to do. We can make our own decisions. And people have. They're staying at home. They're not going on public transport. They're not going into shops, pubs and restaurants. So why do we need any more restrictions?
Part of the reason they're doing that, though, is because, not because necessarily they're worried about being sick, but they just simply don't want to have to isolate over Christmas Day. So some of that behaviour might change come January. The problem is for these businesses, they needed the footfall this week.
It's the busiest time of the year. Last week as well. I was in Leicester Square the other day. I couldn't believe it. It was like a bank holiday, and it was Saturday. It should be rammed. I think it's devastating what's happened to these businesses, and I suspect more money may have to come down the line. But I still don't think there's going to be. I don't buy the idea there's going to be a 2-week circuit breaker. Why do they call it that, by the way? Why don't they just admit what it is? A 2-week lockdown. I don't think there's a political will for it. And if you ask the Labour Party for a review, they haven't got one. They're just going to criticise the government every opportunity, but they don't have a constructive position at all.
Billions of pounds been spent so far in keeping these businesses afloat, which we've paid for.
We have.
The Chancellor has to balance. Do we keep throwing good money effectively after bad if these businesses are going to shut down? At what point do you say, right, that's it? Are we nearly there?
I think we are. Look, yesterday we saw borrowing figures, the highest borrowing in this country the second highest borrowing in our history. Unbelievable figures. We're now £2.3 trillion in debt. What is £1 trillion? I can't even work it out. With the debt levels, we're going to be paying for this. Your grandchildren, Simon, will be paying it, and your great-grandchildren. It took us, I think, till 2000 or 1999 to pay off our Second World War debt. It's going to take that long to pay off this debt. And there is a point where politicians are going to have to say no more. And that's why I don't think we should have any more lockdown restrictions, because we've got to manage health and wealth, two very important issues. And we always hear these wretched scientists coming out and saying, blah, blah, blah. We never get the economic point of view. And the economic point of view is very damaging to the nation's health too if we keep shutting down.
The reality is, though, what those businesses just want is some kind of clarity. And you could argue that in Scotland, they've got more of that. They've had a bit of a roadmap laid out from the 26th onwards, and in England, they don't.
Yeah, and the First Minister is saying now, if you want to go to a football match, no more than 500. And the Scottish First Minister is saying she wants the British taxpayer to pay for it. It's her decision. She's got tax-laying powers in Scotland. Raise the taxes in Scotland. Why have we got to pay the taxes in England for what she's doing in Scotland?
And a very quick word about Wales, where if you go into work, if you can't justify it, you've broken the law.
And you're going to be fined. How do they decide who it should justifiably go to work and who shouldn't? I tell you, we should start with the wretched First Minister who brought that law in. He doesn't need to go into the office. Nobody will they'll manage quite well without him, Mark Drakeford. If he goes into the Welsh Parliament, fine him 60 quid.
Well, the spirit of Christmas is alive and well in
Happy Christmas, everyone.
It's well done. Andrew, always good to see you. Thank you very much. Happy Christmas.
And to you.
Now, it's 22 minutes past 8. Coming up, we're going to bring you the latest on the COVID restrictions faced by all of the nations. We just gave you a bit of a glimpse in the UK after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many. More cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather, at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic, delivering cloud outbreaks of rain over the next few days and some milder conditions for a time. But if you are stepping out first thing this morning, it's going to be cold and frosty, but it will be bright, certainly some hazy sunshine. Further west, always more cloud outbreaks of rain arriving across Northern Ireland through the middle part of the morning. Pushing up towards western Scotland, we could see spits and spots across West Wales as well as the West Country. Dry skies through the afternoon further east, but it will be a cold day yet again. And that rain as it moves across Scotland will turn to snow, particularly above around 300-400 metres. Now, overnight through Wednesday into Thursday, that rain grinds to a halt across Scotland. We will see some showers track across England and Wales, and then more wet weather arrives across Northern Ireland as we head into a Thursday morning. Through Thursday morning, some pockets of frost, but generally speaking, there'll be more cloud, temperatures slightly higher. And you'll notice through the day, the air temperature will become a bit milder. So not as bad, not as cold outside, but we will see some rain, particularly towards the west as well as the north. And eventually this bit of showery rain across Wales as well as the West Country extends across towards the Midlands as well as the southeast as we head into the afternoon. So some wet weather to come, some windy conditions, temperatures on the up though, milder towards the south as well as the west. Double figures here. A lot of rain though for Scotland. That rain will slowly ease as we head into Christmas Eve, and through Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day things turn a little bit colder across the north. The chance of some snow showers across the far northeast. More rain towards the south where it will remain mild. See you later.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 8. You're watching The Great British Breakfast.
Now, the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, is going to outline his plans for COVID restrictions in the country after Christmas later on today. Omicron cases in Wales are predicted to reach several thousand by Boxing Day, with a number of different measures being considered to tackle the spread.
Our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson is across the story for us. She's in Cardiff. We've already got a rough idea, and it's ruffled a lot of feathers.
Yeah, that's right, Simon. Usually I would have had, a full brief last night ahead of this morning to kind of know what is going to be introduced or announced today by the First Minister, but kind of none the wiser this morning. What we do know is that the First Minister will address the nation just after midday today to outline his COVID restriction plans for after Christmas. This isn't leading up to the big day now, it's kind of from Boxing Day onwards, but those finer details about exactly what he's going to announce, we're not too sure just yet. But there are concerns and kind of feelings that it might involve the hospitality industry here in Wales. So measures after Christmas could include things like the rule of 6 in pubs and restaurants again, as well as the return of table service, which of course we saw at the beginning of this year and obviously last year as well. His announcement may even include indoor mixing, but again, we're not sure of the details of that, and perhaps household bubbles might be mentioned once again, but it's not clear if people will be advised on how many people they can kind of see or whether it will actually become law. So it's that guidance over law thing we're not too sure about just yet. What we do know is that ministers aren't expected to impose any sort of restrictive lockdown, which we of course saw over last Christmas. We're not expecting any kind of announcement on that. And as we heard earlier this week and at the end of last week, Christmas is safeguarded and people are able to kind of spend Christmas in Wales how they have planned to. Last week it was announced that nightclubs in Wales will have to close from the 27th of December, and workplaces and shops will also have to impose those 2-metre social distancing rules once again. So it kind of feels like these COVID measures are trickling back into our lives here in Wales, although we're currently at alert level 0. We're not, there's been no kind of indication that we'd be going into alert level 1. We will have to wait until later today to see if anything like that will be announced.
What we have been talking about this morning, fines supposedly can now be handed out to people in Wales who aren't working from home without good reason. I say supposedly, but this is real, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Rosie. It is quite shocking. This has kind of come into force this week, and it has taken people by surprise because there wasn't necessarily a formal announcement to say, this is going to happen. It just kind of came up in the news over the week. So until now, people in Wales have been encouraged to work from home if they can. So that use of guidance. So if you can work from home, you should probably take that option if possible. And this guidance from the Welsh Government has kind of been unwavering throughout the pandemic. There was never kind of an announcement to say, everyone back to work now. It's just been that guidance to say, if you can, make home your office for, a little while longer, please do that. However, this week, workers will receive a £60 fixed penalty notice, and companies could be hit with a £1,000 fine if people are found to be working, in the office or on location without a reasonable excuse or a reason to be there. So unions are pretty shocked about this this decision, to say the least, saying it's not always up to the employee as to where they're working. This isn't their responsibility. It's up to the company and their bosses to decide whether they should be working from home or working in the office. Unions are also saying that this fine will hit the poorest and most vulnerable members of society here in Wales too. So this enforcement approach includes improvement or closure notices for premises, with business owners liable to be fined £1,000 for not complying, which could then rise to a maximum of £10,000. So the Welsh Conservatives and the Welsh Liberal Democrats have asked the Welsh Government to scrap this £60 fine, which can kind of be placed on an individual employee. But this did kind of come out of nowhere. As I said, there wasn't a formal kind of press conference or announcement to say that this was going to be the case in this rule change. But the Welsh Government have said in response that additional measures have been introduced to limit the spread of the virus and protect public health.
Lily, thank you very much. That's Lily Hewitson there in Cardiff.
Now, meanwhile, in England, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that there will be no new COVID restrictions before Christmas this year. He didn't rule out, though, the possibility of introducing them later. Sir Andrew McMichael is a Professor of Immunology of Molecular Medicine at the University of Oxford and joins us now. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Some people are saying if there's need for restrictions, surely it would be better to put them in now before this huge intergenerational mix of people happens on Saturday.
Yes, I think it's a very tight call, but people at Christmas, if they behave more or less like they did last year and keep family groups and different family numbers fairly small, then that is probably okay. And it's very close now. But I really think after Boxing Day, there will have to be some more stringent measures.
If I'd said a year ago to you that we would be facing this situation 1 year on, with a vaccine in force, what would you have said?
Nothing ever surprises me with these kinds of things. I think the problem, the vaccine is wonderful, and but the problem with vaccines and a virus like this is that it will select as what we call escape mutants. That's variants of the virus that can avoid the vaccine, and this is clearly what's been happening here. And that means that the vaccine may become less effective, and it may mean that in due course we need to have a second type of vaccine that targets these new variant viruses. I think the hope is that as the virus varies, it will actually get less, not less infectious perhaps, but less likely to cause disease. And there is a chance that something like that is happening, but we have to wait and see.
This time around, what's different is that there is personal choice. We're not being told by law you'll be breaking it if you meet up with other people. Nicola Sturgeon has pleaded with the population, saying, please keep family celebrations small and safe. What should we be doing? Personally, what decisions are you making about celebrating this weekend?
We were actually going to France for Christmas, but we had to cancel that. So we're now having a small family party at home. With one of our daughter and her family coming to have Christmas lunch with us. I think there's a difference really between people who are vaccinated and people who aren't. So people who've had 2 or 3 vaccines are relatively safer. And indeed, if people who've had the boost probably are partly protected against even getting this infection in the first place. People who are not vaccinated, I think they should really take the greatest precautions because they are the most at risk.
You see, when we say things like that in the past, people immediately say, well, hang on a minute, having the vaccine doesn't stop you transmitting it. Why are you any less of a risk than someone who hasn't been vaccinated?
I think having the vaccine, you certainly can transmit it if you're infected, if you've had the vaccine. But I think it's less risky than if you haven't had the vaccine. You'll be releasing more virus, and you're more likely to have an infection with more virus about and more likely to infect other people.
Well, Sir Andrew, enjoy Christmas as well as you can with your revised plans, but we're grateful to you for joining us.
Thank you.
Sir Andrew McMichael, thank you very much.
Now, coming up here on the programme, this is a silly question. Do you have a spare £28 million? That's how much you'd need to buy a house on England's most expensive street. Where is it? We'll find out next.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme. 20 minutes to 9. Now, the alarming COVID case numbers and doomsday messaging can be leading to some of us feeling fearful. Future restrictions, potentially future lockdowns, our health, the health of our loved ones. To help us combat this sort of cycle of fear and worry is Laura Dodsworth, author of A State of Fear. Thank you very much. It's an unusual title, that, A State of Fear. Are we in a state of fear?
Well, the book came out in May, which I think it was a very accurate way of describing how the government and the media had created a state of fear at the time. The hypothesis of the book is that the government used fear in order to create compliance among the population. Just a week ago, Sir Desmond Swayne MP delivered a tirade in the House of Commons and described the government as the Ministry of Fear and said it had unleashed the dogs of war and was twisting the fear lever. It's quite florid language, but I think it describes how a lot of people are feeling now, that the government keeps trying to press the fear buttons. He's not alone. Andrew Bridgen MP also said that the most dangerous epidemic sweeping the land and the world is an epidemic of fear. So epidemics will eventually come and go, but our basic psychology is here to stay. And what I explored in my book is whether the UK government should have relied upon the use of fear nudges and behavioural science to gain compliance from the population.
Laura, the thing is, it does seem to have worked, given the lack of footfall at the moment isn't due to any government restriction. It's down to people's fear.
Absolutely. Although I don't think it's as clear this time what the fear is in regarding. I mean, in the last week, we've basically locked ourselves down. So nativity plays and office Christmas parties have been cancelled. Stocks of lateral flow tests ran dry. And we've done that ourselves this time. But it's through some using the same techniques that have been used throughout the epidemic management. One of the Spy B advisors that I interviewed anonymously for the book described the government's use of fear as dystopian and totalitarian, which sounds dramatic, but the most severe criticism of the government came from advisors that I interviewed. So recently we've had a very alarmist press briefing with lots of priming in it. The Prime Minister used the word boosted 8 times and booster 8 times and vaccination repeatedly in a very short announcement when he interrupted TV viewing the last Sunday. Worst case scenario modelling, the picking of big numbers, which aren't always substantiated by evidence, but are predictions and extrapolations. And the thing about big numbers and worst case scenarios is that through something called salience, they stick in your mind. That big headline sticks in your mind. New advertising, which is quite frightening. There's an ad called "Don't Let COVID Hang Around," which shows black mist coming out of the mouth. That's quite comfortable probably for adults like you and I to see on TV, but it's been frightening children and led to complaints to the Advertising Standards Authority. And I think one of the worst things that's characterising this stage of the epidemic management is anti-vax rhetoric. So while it's very much the government's mission to encourage people to get vaccinated, they're also encouraging a kind of divide and rule rhetoric and demonising people who choose not to. A common refrain is the selfish unjabbed. And actually people have a multitude of reasons not to be vaccinated. And if you think about 30% of London is not vaccinated, it's obviously quite bizarre to describe them all as selfish. And also the use of fines. Large fines have characterised the epidemic, and most recently they've introduced fines of up to £10,000 for falsifying COVID passports. So there are lots of tactics which are used to deliberately create fear.
Laura.
And this time without...
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, you've given us a list there, and we haven't got time to unpick all of them. But the bottom line is we have a government that's trying to protect us all. And there is no doubt that having 3 vaccinations is protecting the population. To deny otherwise is to deny the facts.
Well, I'm not denying that or even getting into that conversation. I'm just saying that at the moment there's a rhetoric that people are unjabbed are selfish. No, not at all. I haven't talked about vaccine efficacy or leaning on that as a pillar of pandemic management, not at all. I'm just saying that there's a theme coming up that the unjabbed are selfish. This is using a technique in behavioural psychology called norms. You encourage people into the group that you want them to be and other and dehumanise the people who are outside that group. But I think that's also leading to some very difficult fractures with families at Christmas time, where people are making tough decisions about who to see and who not to see. But I think that labelling people with negative terms like unselfish could lead ultimately to more backfiring in the future of trust in public health. And I think that it's an underhand tactic to play on the people. I mean, there's another way of looking at it, which is it's kind of deflection. We've had a year, 2 years, well, many years really, for the NHS to be prepared for illness in the winter. And actually, by putting all of the focus on a group of people who don't want to be vaccinated, it takes the focus away from policy and politicians.
Laura, thank you very much. It's always good to hear your view, and it's one that is reflected in our tweets as well. But thank you very much. I've got a view on that, GBViews at GBNews.uk. I can feel it coming.
Please do, yeah. 8:45 now. A home buyer will need to pay around just shy of £29 million on average to live in the most expensive street in England and Wales, according to new analysis. Tite Street in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea has been identified as the UK's most expensive. All of the top 5 most expensive streets, perhaps unsurprisingly, are in London. In comparison, the most expensive street in Wales had an average price of £2 million.
Mark Hayward is the Chief Policy Advisor at Property Mark. Mark, good morning to you. And do those figures strike you as outlandish, as they do to some?
No, good morning. I don't think so. Since we came out of lockdown one, the property market has been proceeding apace. Prime central London was not seeing much price growth up until the end of the pandemic, but that's really come back. But what we are now seeing is huge demand for houses. Our recent survey reveals there are 29 buyers now for every house on the market, which is unheard of. And the stock of houses available to buy is at the lowest since records began.
You've got people queuing up for a £29 million house?
I don't think it'll be a very long queue, but there will certainly be demand, and that demand is not only from UK residents, it will be from overseas buyers and overseas investors. London, for instance, is seen as a safe haven, protected really from many great shifts in value and prices. So, no, it's not surprising.
£29 million actually get you on that road?
Just about. I mean, there are more expensive houses that have transacted this year and historically in and around London. So no, I'm not.
But I mean, sorry, sort of, are you getting a swimming pool with that, or is it just 3 bedrooms? What kind of house are you getting on the most expensive street?
Well, if you looked at the picture, you'd have seen that it's a terrace property. It's not even a detached house. Now, I don't know what the level of accommodation is. I should think it'd be quite substantial. There you see. It's got a plaque, so obviously someone famous lived there. It's highly desirable.
Oscar Wilde was one of those who lived there, but there are others. There's the American painter, James Whistler. He also lived in that street. But does that knock a price up if you've got a couple of blue plaques in it?
I think it helps. It helps. I wouldn't say, the famous were there before you, and some people will be impressed by that.
Some people. The most expensive street. Tell me what it is that makes something so desirable, so alluring that people will pay that kind of money for a terrace house on that type of road.
All right. Well, terraced house is probably being derogatory. It is a large property on a highly sought-after street. And the other thing that you need to remember is that these properties become available very, very rarely. So there will be competition for them. They're not on the market every day. They're not on the market every year. So when one does become available, there will be huge competition from those that see that as the place to be. And all right, there's a slight element of fashion. There's a slight element of who else lives there because I want to live alongside them. So there is that competitive element. But it is a historic demand which has been there for many years for those parts of London and other parts of the UK that are seeing this price growth.
Does this just go on forever, or is there a moment where some people would say madness, where this madness does stop?
House price rises never go on forever. There will be a slowing down. No one would have predicted when we went into lockdown and when the pandemic struck that this would produce a house price boom. I think now with interest rates beginning to rise, that will start to slow the market. But it can't continue because it's an affordability issue, not necessarily at the top end, but generally that people can afford no more.
Mark, thank you so much for talking to us and joining us, and a very happy Christmas. Really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Mark Hayward there. Now, can you guess what false teeth, a scorpion and a slice of pizza all have in common? No, well, they were just some of the most bizarre donations children's charity Barnardo's has received this year.
The charity's revealed a list of the strangest items left by contributors to its stores as part of its Christmas donations appeal. Staff and volunteers received donations including a scorpion preserved in a jar of formaldehyde in St Andrews in Scotland, a farmer's lamb castrating tool donated in rural Kendal, Cumbria. Someone might need that there, maybe. Staff in Catterick were delighted, apparently, to receive a man's coat until they discovered a slice of pizza inside.
Sharon Goswami is the Barnardo's head of retail operations. I don't know where to start, Sharon, with this, but it must be fun to compile a list like this.
Gosh, it's one of those things that you do throughout the year, and you don't realise how much comes through and how much it tickles you every time it does. And the sense of fun that you get from our donations, it's wonderful. So, yeah, it's an interesting list to see.
Interesting, but actually, in truth, receiving a coat with a slice of pizza in, that really, someone hasn't thought about it, have they? They've been careless and maybe they just couldn't be bothered to, I don't know, recycle the coat properly?
Well, the mind boggles. I wouldn't want to guess why or how that's happened. But, our donators donate all throughout the year at different times for different reasons. And so it's quite easy to forget that you've added something you potentially shouldn't have to one of our donations. But we're grateful for every single one because we will find the value in all of them. And where else can you get a pizza with your coat?
Hang on, you say you're grateful for every single one. Chocolate gift boxes, apparently, you're very happy to receive. A tin of crab meat is fine, but not the one you received this year in Scotland.
No, well, a tin of crab meat passed its sell-by date, or use-by date, actually, by 6 years. It takes some dedication to keep something like that. But you know what? It comes with a multitude of other things. So we will take the good and the bad because we'll find the value in everything.
I think a lot of people in lockdown used the time to do a really big clear out, didn't they? And we know lots of charity shops were saying, we just can't accept any more donations. We are overwhelmed by them. Do you think there is a bit of a mentality where people think, I could take this to the dump, I could dispose of this properly, it will be easier if I just leave it outside my local charity shop? Presumably, you do want people to think a little bit about what they're giving to you.
Yeah, we would absolutely encourage everybody to look at what value we can get from their donation. But at the same time, we'd want to make sure that we receive everything. And if taking that little bit of extra effort does discourage someone, then we'd rather they give it to us and we can do something with it. Then put it in a dump and a landfill, because we know where that will end up, and we know that we can do more with it than it ending up in a landfill.
What on earth is that we're looking at
we generate.
What?
Gosh, sorry, you go ahead.
Well, what was that thing we're looking at?
Oh no.
The one before, these are chopped carrots, which were carefully wrapped for us. I'm sure Santa's reindeer would have loved them. The used underpants, which were also sent with a lovely note to say, thank you, sorry, I hope this works for you. And seat warmers and additions to help you use facilities.
Yes. Yeah, all right, Sharon, we're there. We got it. Now, there must be some items where maybe you would feel the need to reunite the owner with them. I'm thinking of the false teeth that came in a handbag.
Well, if our customers visit back and they've donated something that potentially they did in error, then absolutely we would. But if they haven't, then we will take the opportunity to move it along as needed.
Will ever donate things and have regret and come and ask for them back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't happen often. And I remember very clearly when I had a bag donated, and actually inside was things for a hen do, and it seemed like it would be an eventful week. And the very next day, someone came back a little bit red-faced to say, I think I've donated something I shouldn't have. And we will always return a donation if it was donated in error, and the customer feels that that's something they want back.
What was it?
The hen do kit.
Oh, hen do kit.
I won't go into details, but I'll tell you it was for an eventful weekend, I think is the best way to put it.
You're talking about the used pregnancy test kit, aren't you?
Oh, I wasn't specifically, but you can. That would be one of the things that someone would want back.
Oh, there's the packet of Viagra tablets. All right, okay. I mean, do you all get together just the week before you release this list and say, "Oh, this will get us in the headlines"?
Do you know what? We get together and we say, not the week before, but they're wonderful stories to share, and it makes us laugh. And you get these through the door, and the first reaction is, have I got this right? Is this really what I'm seeing? And then the second one is, what do I do with this? And then the third one is, right, this is what I'm going to do. And so it goes through a cycle, and we have fun with it. And we thought it would be, it's festive time of year, 'tis the season. It'd be great for everybody to have fun with it too.
I'm fearful of what's going to be donated to you today, now, after this conversation. So you're basically saying all donations, gratefully welcome.
All donations gratefully welcome. We'd love for them not to be faulty or in a resellable condition. But if you're not sure, bring them to us and we can certainly help with that decision, because we will find a way to make value of it.
Karen, thank you for all the work that you do. It's a fantastic charity. And thank you for your time this morning. A very happy Christmas to you and all those who work with you. Sharon Goswami, thank you.
And maybe even thank you to the person who did the coat with the pizza, because it gave us a bit of a laugh. But
We've had a few laughs this morning. How's your submarine Spitfire doing?
OK, I really wish that hadn't happened, and I would really love if we pretend it never happened ever again. It was very embarrassing.
Come up with that. Brilliant idea. Submarine Spitfire.
Well, I've got to, with authority, tell people what's happening for the rest of the morning.
You're just staying on the bulletins. That's it from me. I'll be back tomorrow morning with Rosie. We look forward to seeing you at 6 o'clock. Next up, Tom Harwood's. First, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Bright for some today, frosty for many, more cloud towards the west with some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland pushing ever northeastwards. Now, high pressure's been in charge of our weather at least for a week or so, bringing calm conditions. It's now left the shores of the UK and low pressure lurking to the west across the mid-Atlantic.